Востаннє на цей світ біленький, у смертну годину козак мовив так: хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки. Як вороги кляті нас на кіл саджали, як живцем палили, у смолі пекли. Козаки у хата життя не благали, про долю України думи їх були. Хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки. Хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки. Хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Зі сходу припхались до нас барани, для восстановлення великої страни, найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи, всяке озброєння, різне, ракети, потужні машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, і ми зачаїли на орків образу, з бандитів російських робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, на вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто ж винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає їх цар.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm joined with Enforcer Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And tonight we'll be going over the previous 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine on day 79, just one day short of being day 80. Once again, it's been another wonderful day in the defense of the nation of Ukraine, and we have seen that the Ukrainians have made massive progress, but most importantly, what we've seen in international news is that the Belarusian government, specifically Lukaschenko himself, is now starting to jump ship, it seems, from the Russian side, and it seems like he's trying to align himself for a smooth transition over towards the West, and I'll explain why here in a minute, because what he said today was a massive change and shift from what has been said before. Before we get to the actual news, let's go over tonight's schedule. Starting off, we'll actually be covering the news in Kiev first. We've had a couple of interesting bits of information today from there, and so I would like to cover those. We will then go into Belarus, and we'll cover the news that is giving tonight's video its title. It is very bizarre news considering Belarus's previous actions over the past week. And it's showing that apparently deep within the pro-Russian command structure and pro-Russian countries, apparently the situation is not going well, and the writing's on the wall that things are going to fall apart here in the future. We'll then actually travel back down into Ukraine and cover the remaining part of the Northern Front news, and then we will move into Russia and cover what happened near Lake Baikal in the city of Irkutsk. I'm sorry if I did mispronounce that, y'all, but I'm not good at pronouncing Russian or Ukrainian town names. With that, we'll actually go into our first question segment and answer 3 questions from the chat. We'll then move into the location unknowns and cover those. We have around 15 of them today, a pretty sizable amount, but still not too high. After we cover all of those location unknowns, we will then go into another question segment where we'll answer 3 more questions. We'll then cover the Kharkiv news as massive gains have been made in this area of the front, so stay tuned for that information because it is impressive. We will then be moving down the rest of the Donbass, covering the news there. We'll cover the one bit of news from Mariupol, which is this is the first time during the entirety of the war that we've only gotten one piece of news over the course of one day out of Mariupol, which is telling us that apparently the situation is starting to stabilize there. Otherwise, we would have gotten more information. We'll then be moving on to cover the rest of the news here in the Southern Front. We have finally adjusted the map here on this stream to account for the Russian pocket, well, the Russian, I guess you could call it, area of control west of the Dnipro River near Kryvyi Rih. We've actually gotten enough video evidence and official reports to indicate that this area is in fact occupied by a sizable amount of Russian forces. With that, we'll finally move to Snake Island and cover some of the news there and the news left in the country of Ukraine, which is in Lviv. Beyond that, we will not have any more news, so then we will go on to the address from the President of Ukraine, and then we'll round out tonight's stream by answering everyone's questions who sent in a super chat, and also everyone, well, as many people as we can who sent in a question through the live chat. Once again, I want to remind everyone here that if you would like to have a question looked at and answered probably by me, make sure to put @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt on it, so that way it'll pop up on Matthew's radar and he can take them all and compile them into a list. And so with that, let's start off the news for today. Starting off, we can actually see that someone took a video near the base of the Kiev TV tower near Babin Yar today, and we can see that the damage still remains from the missile attacks that occurred an incredibly long while ago in this war. So with that, I'm going to let y'all see the video.
Nice bike. It's a fixie. Gotta love those fixie guys.
You know what this guy sounds like? Let me just pause this for a second. Doesn't this sound like the lunatic who was on his bicycle, the American bicyclist, who was near Hostomel at the very beginning of the war and he started biking there? This sounds like the exact same guy. Anyways, I'm going to let the video continue.
The Night Riders in Beijing. Hello.
Our world is
So now I have to mute the video because it has copyrighted music in it. But here you can see some of the remnants of the war that still exist around the Kiev TV tower. The absolute damage that was caused by the Russian attacks on the city. And while Kiev is in fairly good condition compared to most cities that were close or on the front lines that the Russians did control in the northern area of the country, it still did sustain a decent amount of damage. It's still wonderful to know that the Russians will apparently never pursue the Northern Front as a viable option once again. And so, with that, that is the end of that clip. We're now going to move on to the next bit of Kiev news, where we've seen that the first war criminal has been put on trial today. This is a Russian prisoner who was captured by the Ukrainians. His name is Vadim Shishmarin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, but the Ukrainians did put him on trial today for his crimes and atrocities against the Ukrainian people. Hopefully that evil man will face proper justice and swiftly brought on by the Ukrainian courts. With that, we're now going to move on to the massive news of today that has given the video its title for the night. We've seen that Lukaschenko has had a very vast change in his stance on the war and the Ukrainians. Here in this bit of information and news, we can actually hear Lukashenko himself praising the Ukrainian army and its tactics, and he says that the Belarusian armed forces should learn from them. This is a massive change from the rhetorics that Lukashenko has been supporting during the entirety of the war. At the beginning, he actually said to his army, "Don't worry, y'all, javelins are no big deal. Just, move the tank around from left to right, and you'll dodge it. You'll be fine." And then he said, "We're probably going to go into the war. We're kind of going into the war." He started giving updates about a month in on how the war was going and trying to make it seem like it was going good. And then Lukashenko started talking about, well, the war is starting to drag on a little bit. And then we saw that the Belarusians never got serious about joining the war about a month in, and that they were looking like they were just never going to join it. Then we finally saw the Russian forces withdraw around the same time from the Northern Front and pretty much pull most of their forces out of Belarus that were being staged there. And so Belarus did nothing for that time. Just recently, they did something that seemed a little escalatory, and that's that they sent some of their armed forces, some of their army, down to the Ukrainian border in response to what they were saying was a buildup of 20,000 Ukrainian troops on their border. Now, today, we can actually see that Lukashenko is taking a massive step back from his previous rhetoric that I just laid out, and now he's talking about how great and admirable the Ukrainian army is, which is telling me that he's trying to line himself up to go into a different direction rather than the Russian direction, because if he was wanting to make sure that he was pals with Putin and the pro-Russian countries in the CSTO, he would be talking about how poorly the Ukrainians are conducting the war and how well off the Russian army is, but here he is not. Unfortunately, I don't have a speech-to-text translation, but I did make sure to find one, and that's what he's saying in a nutshell. So I'm going to let y'all see it come out of his mouth himself, and hopefully those of y'all who can speak, I'm not really sure if the Belarusians speak Russian or some other variant of the, I guess you could say, Slavic languages like Belarusian. I do believe that there is a Belarusian language, but anyways, I'm going to let the video play.
Урок Украины. Самое эффективное, в том числе со стороны украинских вооруженных сил, оказались мобильные группы, которые мгновенно, неожиданно, приближаясь к противнику, который гораздо их превосходит, наносят разительные удары, особенно по тыловым скоплениям войск.
So, based off of what Lukashenko is saying, here's what I'm supposing. This is entirely a very large assumption, but hear me out. It seems like a logical one. Apparently, up in the higher-ups of the governments of Russia and Belarus, the war is actually being looked at in a balanced way, and they're seeing that the war is not going well in any regard, and that the Russians are losing ground. The Belarusians like to be on the winning side, of course. We've seen that time and time again. And we've actually seen Lukashenko be somewhat pro-Western previously. Actually, during the war in Georgia and also in the war in the Donbass, Lukashenko has been one to try and bring the Russians to the negotiating table and cease hostilities as soon as possible. We've seen them try and do that over and over again. And so now it seems, now that Lukashenko's gotten the information that the Russians are not doing well anymore in Ukraine, and they're doing incredibly poorly, which we will get to as to what happened in the Kharkiv front today, it now seems like he's seizing the opportunity to speak his piece, I'm supposing, and start talking about how well the Ukrainians are actually doing, which is an irrefutable fact at this point, considering the information and video evidence we've been able to get here on this channel. So I think that he's actually trying to line himself up to either negotiate with the Russians to get them a peace treaty with the Ukrainians, or he's trying to prepare his country to jump ship, which will be a very dangerous move for him to try. If Belarus did try to jump ship, they don't have the protection that NATO countries have. They're actually a member of the CSTO, which is Russia's version of NATO, and so they would most likely have some kind of military intervention from the Russians involved in their country if they did try such a dangerous and risky maneuver. But we can see that Lukashenko is trying to distance himself from this war as much as possible in terms of his support for the Russian side, and it looks like he's now starting to shift his support towards Ukraine. A very interesting change. With that, we're now going to move back into Ukraine, where we can see in the town of Nizhny, destroyed Russian vehicles have been left behind, and they're now being piled up into one large area. Here we can see almost every single kind of vehicle that the Russians used in the northern front. Here we can see a Tiger armored car. And now, unfortunately, I'll have to mute this because it has copyrighted music. But you can just see the amount of destroyed vehicles that they've compiled in Nizhny alone. And I'm sure that the scene is a very common one now in the northern front, as they're trying to get all the vehicles into one spot and ship them out for the scrapyards. We can also see some washing machines. Once again, it seems like the Russians have a thing for washing machines. If they're looting anything, it's always washing machines. Very crazy to me, and it's insane that that's actually something that they're looting in mass to the point that it's being brought to the scrapyards along with Russian vehicles. With that, we're going to let the video continue. Now we can see more destroyed Russian vehicles, a slightly burned out BMP-2. We can see a flipped over T-72B3 turret. We can see another Tiger armored car. We can now see the fender of a T-72B, it appears. I am correct, that is a T-72B. We can now see BTR-80. We can see more destroyed Russian vehicles. These appear to be outside of Nizhny. We can also see a Mista S that was popped wide open right here. Now that's really neat because you can actually see that the turret, rather than the front of it, does not exist beyond that. Very interesting little picture right there. We can now see a flipped over MTLB, an abandoned BTR-82, T-72B3, a bridge layer, a TOR system, another bridge layer, looks like a flipped over MTLB, a Euro 4320, another TOR, a T-72B3, another tank, some kind of trailer, it seems. Let me go back to that one. With some kind of a civilian truck, it seems, that doesn't look like a normal Russian supply truck. We now see a 4320. A couple of MTLBs, more destroyed Russian vehicles. I mean, like, the list goes on and on. They are showing all the vehicles that were destroyed or abandoned in the Nizhny area. And that gives you an idea that the actual casualty statistics and fatality statistics that we're getting from the Ukrainians about the Russian side can't be too far-fetched, because they've compiled all of these vehicles in the Nizhny area alone. And that's giving you an incredibly good idea of the amount of losses that they must have sustained over the entirety of the front. Because if you see that many vehicles piled up into a single rail yard in this one village, imagine how many other villages of that size there are in Ukraine, in the northern area, that probably have the same pile of vehicles in them that the Ukrainians are trying to clear out and, you know, return Ukraine back from a battlefield into a normal country. So I guess you could say that it is very true that the Russian situation is incredibly poor. And now that they're even in the southeastern front, they've shrunk down their actual operational capacity by a large amount. They're still doing incredibly poor. With that, we're now going to move deep within Russia, deeper than we've ever gone before. We're going to go all the way to the city of Irkutsk, which is a city that is near Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is actually the deepest freshwater lake on Earth, which is a very interesting fun fact, but that's not what we're here for today. We're here to see that apparently some pro-Ukrainian saboteurs are now attacking Russian cultural monuments and Russian cultural buildings in cities such as Irkutsk, like we can see here. A very historic building in the center of the city has caught on fire today, and it looks like it was raging out of control, and the Russian firefighters were very hard pressed to stop it. So I'm going to let y'all see this video of the historic building burning. And as you can see there, doesn't look like the Russians are having a very good time with the burning buildings and such. With that, we're now going to move back into Ukraine, and we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat. I know this is incredibly early, and please bear with us, everyone. We will, of course, get through them and answer them and return back to the location unknown news. So everyone hang tight, and we're going to answer those 3 questions. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt once again. And first up, we have a very generous $100 donation from Paolo Corradini, who is a longtime channel supporter. He says, smash the like button, everybody. Let's bring in new viewers and Slava Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support, Paolo. It does mean a lot. And everyone, if you would like to, and I have to say that's a huge amount of support, actually, and I thank you a lot. It, of course, helps us to keep running, because if we don't, if we can't, like, feed ourselves, get some coffee, and keep the lights on, we're going to have to go do something else, you know, of course, to survive. So I thank you so much. It helps us to keep on going. And also, if everyone would like to hit the like button, it does help us out a lot. So with that, I thank you so much, Paolo Corradini, for the massive support. It helps out this stream a whole load. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Praise Adonai, who is also a longtime channel supporter, who says, Napoleon met his end at Waterloo. Does the 1853 Crimean War have significance today? Where or how will Putin meet his Waterloo? The sooner the better.
I believe that Putin will be meeting his Waterloo somewhere around the Kharkiv area or Izium. That's where I'm starting to see that the Russian forces could be in a bit of a pickle, but we don't really want to go too far into it, because of course that could lead me to start discussing about what the Ukrainians might plan on doing in that area. And of course, while I'm not right on everything, I've been right on a large amount of stuff, and so I don't really want to say what I think the Ukrainians will be doing, just in case there are eyes and ears here on the stream that are listening from the Russian side that could relay that information to someone rather important. Because while I've never really thought that anyone important watches these streams, you know, in terms of like YouTube important or governmentally or politically or anything, I've actually found out that a large amount of people, for example, a decent amount of the Funker 530 team, actually watches these streams, and considering that they watch them, I'm thinking that really anyone could be watching them, so I don't really want to go into what the Ukrainians will do, but I can see that the Russians may be meeting their Waterloo somewhere around Kharkiv or Izium. With that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the last one of this question segment, and then we're going to cover the location unknown news.
And the last one of this question segment goes to 21 Grams, who puts in a $10 donation. And I used to get really worried when people would ask us to do this, but luckily I have a new computer, so I don't have to worry about it crashing anymore. They say, time for everyone in the chat to say which country they're from. Thanks, Enforcer.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and if everyone would like to say where they're from, of course don't dox yourself, don't give like your street address or anything, but if you would like to say the country you're from, of course that would be really cool to see where the Leaf Spring Army hails from, because it's a worldwide army, and we have loads of people from around the world who watch these streams. And so, that is the end of this question segment. I once again thank all of you so much for your support. It does help us to continue running this channel, and I would like to give a personal thanks to Paolo Corradini for the large amount of support that will keep this channel running for a pretty good while. So with that, we're now going to move on to the location unknown news, and we can see that the chat's going a million miles an hour, so we're now going to move straight into the location unknown news. Starting off, we can see a U.S. volunteer giving his recount of what's going on in Ukraine. So I'm going to start the video, unmute it, and then let it play.
This is beyond fucking peace dead. Katsap scum. Look what they've done to our beautiful land. The universities, the churches, the schools, the civilian homes.
And with that, that was the end of the video. Of course, you can see that this American volunteer is heavily upset by what's been occurring in Ukraine, and I believe we can all agree that every single one of us is heavily upset with what's going on over there. It seems to be absolutely atrocious, and it's not only seeming to be atrocious, it is atrocious what the Russians have been doing to the civilians in Ukraine, and hopefully the war criminals that have been perpetrating these crimes can be brought to justice incredibly soon, as we're finally seeing the first war criminal go on trial for the atrocities he's committed. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see that a Ukrainian MLRS was in action. Of course, we see a lot of these videos. They're a very normal sight, but it is wonderful to see Ukrainian artillery doing the work of an entire Western world. And so, here's the video.
Батарея УА, визначено кількість снарядів по московським підарасам. Залпом 333!
Very nice to see, of course, always happy to see it. And it lets us know that the Ukrainians are, of course, pounding the Russians with everything they've got. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see Russian losses today on film. This also includes some bodies. It's not exactly graphic, but you can see Russian infantry that were killed. So if you are a little squeamish, make sure to leave the stream and come back afterwards, so that way you don't have to see this if you are a little bit squeamish to it. But here are the losses on film that have been taken in an unknown location. As you can see, a destroyed Russian truck. And now we can see an abandoned / destroyed BTR-80, of course, with some corpses strewn about from the Russian forces. Looks like the Ukrainians have been doing a massive amount of damage, of course, to Russian infantry forces. As we can see here in this clip, it appears that a BTR-80 armored personnel carrier, along with its complement of infantry that may have been riding in it, were wiped out entirely. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see first responders getting shelled. These Ukrainian first responders are much like every other first responder, and they're doing an incredible load of work and really helping out on the war front without actually fighting for the call. Well, fighting with arms. Of course, they did come under fire today, and you, of course, have to hail their bravery for enduring such stressful situations and still trying to do anything to support the war. So, with that, here's the video.
Если нас загибешь, это твои последние слова.
Я вас всех люблю.
Я вас всех, сука, ненавижу.
И все будет Украина, блядь.
Все будет Украина. Не будьте пидорасами.
That's the end of that video, but of course you can see that these first responders are out there in the thick of it, in a way, in the line of danger, and they're still continuing to try and do their job. Of course, wonderful to see, and I do wish them the best of luck. In the next bit of Location Unknown news, we've seen Ukrainian artillery being guided by a drone once again. Drones have been attributing a deadly amount of accuracy to the Ukrainian artillery force because the information they have been providing has been invaluable to their fire missions and has been helping them to become much more effective. As we can see here, the Ukrainians are using a D-20 artillery piece, an incredibly antique artillery system designed in the 50s, but due to the input of the drone operators being able to tell the artillery exactly where to hit, the artillery fire is now nearly dead on. So I'm going to let y'all see this video. It's very interesting to see that a drone can add so much to the effectiveness of any artillery piece. As we can see here, we can see the drone operator with his drone. We can now see the D-20 firing. We can now see them reloading the piece as fast as they can. We can now see them firing the D-20 again. Once again, they are reloading the piece as fast as possible. Now, this is how fast an artillery crew is supposed to operate. Whenever you watch a Russian video or a pro-Russian forces video, you always see them operating at a snail's pace. This Ukrainian artillery unit is actually working at an incredibly fast speed, much like a normal artillery unit should. We can now see the D-20 artillery shells landing on the battlefield, and we can see that one of them was a direct hit on a Russian vehicle, knocking it out. We can now see them putting some inscriptions. Let's actually read it. It was actually in English. From something. It says O-L-K or OK from OK. Oh, no, UK or UA. So it's saying from Ukraine, leave this land. I like that. And I believe that they'll be leaving this land not physically. Looks like they'll be leaving it in spirit after this artillery is done with them. We can now see them reloading the piece once more and continuing the work that the Ukrainians must do to expel the Russians from their land. And it looks like they're doing an incredibly good job. And we'll get to that in the Kharkiv front just a little bit later on from now. So everyone, make sure to hang out for a bit because we will be getting to the Kharkiv news here incredibly soon. And there has been a massive frontline change there. And we're going to get to why and how here soon. We're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians mastering Camouflage class. Now, this is something that you don't really see often, and this may be something that a lot of y'all who are huge movie fans may remember from the movie Wolverines. In the movie Wolverines, the original one, not the one that sucks, the kids actually came up with some kind of a ambush at a gas station in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, where a Russian tank pulled up to get some gas from a normal gas station, which I was kind of finding weird. But they got out and harassed one of the girls that was in the group. She ran off into a field, and then they popped up out of these trap doors in the middle of the field that had been camouflaged to look like the ground, and then they fired at the Russians. Here we can see that the Ukrainians are apparently huge fans of that tactic, as they've now created a trap door with a small tree on top of it, which is actually even a step up from what the kids did in the movie Wolverine. So I'm going to let y'all see this because I have to say they did an incredibly good job. You would never know they were down there. Anyways, here's the video.
Хтось є там, хлопці? Слава Україні!
And now I have to mute it, of course, because it's got copyrighted music. Let me see if I can up this quality here. All right, we're going to back up real quick because the quality dropped for a second. Come on, work with me. All right, there we go. Now you can see the little trap door down there, and you would not be able to tell that there was a trap door there. They did a perfect job at concealing where that trap door was and making it blend in with the ground. And so I have to say, great job from the Ukrainians. They are doing an impressive job everywhere. And I'd have to say, they're overperforming. This kind of camouflage is unnecessary, yet the Ukrainians are so into winning this war, they're putting in the extra amount of effort into everything, including this small trapdoor to conceal the Ukrainians' locations. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainian armed forces praising the M777 howitzer as an incredibly effective piece. Unfortunately, the actual post itself, which verified this information, is gone. Apparently it's been removed by the moderators, but as the caption says, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, showed the M777s in action, and he said he wanted to convey that this is a high-precision and very effective weapon, which we have been seeing on film to be very true. So, I'm happy to see that the Ukrainians are glad with their brand new shipment of M777s, and not only have the Americans been the ones shipping these artillery pieces over to Ukraine, there of course have been other nations that have been shipping over these artillery pieces, for example, Estonia and Canada. So a huge amount of support to them as well for sending over such competent and long-range artillery pieces that are outclassing the Russian artillery pieces in every way, and allowing for the Ukrainians to engage in counter battery fire without putting themselves at the risk of being the victims of that same fate. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see that a Polish grenade launcher has made its way into Ukraine. As of course the very typical revolver-style grenade launcher, where it has a cylinder, and the cylinder rotates, and each grenade is brought to the, I guess you could say barrel, each of these little round cylinders on the barrel, well not barrel, the cylinder is a chamber. And so I don't really know if that's chambering the round or what, like what the technical term is, but it does bring up the grenade itself to the barrel to then be fired. As we can see here, they're showing one off. And I like how that guy did the little thing at the end with the grenade launcher shell. Let's watch that one more time. I don't know what that was, but I'm glad he's having a bit of a fun time. Hopefully he can keep on having a fun time and use that to great effect. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Russian tank in a hurried frenzy as it backs up through trees and cars to get out of the way of whatever it was at. I don't know what this thing was doing, but whoever was driving it appears to have gotten a little bit too much vodka. So, with that, here's the video. You can now see it backing up through trees, over a car. And I just want everyone to know the car was unoccupied. With that, that's the end of the video, but as you can see, I don't know what they were doing here. The cameraman was busting out laughing at what was going on. I don't have an idea why the tank driver just started backing through everything behind the tank. Usually you don't see that on film. And also, from what we could see in the footage, it appears that the actual tank's barrel hit a tree as it was backing up. And I was actually from someone that a tank barrel hitting any kind of object outside of the tank and kind of scraping against it can actually throw off the calibration of the aiming system inside the tank, which will have to lead to the entire thing being recalibrated, which is apparently a pretty lengthy process. So hopefully this tank will be much more ineffective due to the idiotic driving done by this tanker in particular. And so we're going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news. Here we can see old man with a load of wisdom. This man apparently is in spiritual connection to his Cossack ancestors, because this man actually knew exactly where to dig a well to get some water in the trench. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a speech-to-text translation for this, but I will tell you what the man is saying. Right now, in this beginning part of the clip, he'll be saying something about, we need to get a well to have some fresh water. I know where to dig a well. It's going to be right here. The water will be about 6 feet down. Then in the next part, you'll see that he's dug a massive square hole into the trench, and you'll see him down there digging, and then he looks up at the camera and he says, you see right here, my boy, I was right. You know, just 6 feet down, the water's already kind of starting to puddle in. Tomorrow we'll have a well. And this man pretty much dug a well on his own intuition, and he was spot on with his assessment of where a perfect spot would be to dig a well. So these soldiers will actually be having a nice amount of fresh water within the next day as this large hole he's dug into the ground begins to fill with water. With that, here's the video. Oh, come on. It's going into slideshow mode. Everyone, give me just a second. We're going to try and fix that, hopefully. You can see the hole he's digging right there, just in case if it goes into slideshow mode again. Also, another crazy thing to note is that it actually appears that this man is actually the cooler version of the water boy, because he's using something that looks like a dowsing rod. And for those of y'all who don't know what a dowsing rod is, it's kind of a wives' tale or a witch's tale or whatnot that's kind of based around superstition, that a certain shaped rod or a stick that's kind of shaped like a Y, and you hold the Y by the two handles at the back with the bottom of it facing outwards, and it apparently, although this isn't true, will help you to find whatever you're looking for, whether it be oil, water, or whatnot. So it appears that this old man is actually using some form of a dowsing rod, and he bases his entire assumption around it. What's crazy is that it wasn't wrong. He actually found the water just 6 feet under the trench. Well, the water table just 6 feet under the trench. Here's the video once again. Hopefully it doesn't go into slideshow mode. Oh my lord, it went into slideshow mode. So let's see if I can fix that. Maybe put it up to here. Nope, that doesn't fix it.
Де вода? Так, диви, ось вже під курня, ось водичка пішла. Тобто вже у нас вже отак вода буде.
Пішла, да.
Видно?
Я собі, да, посилюєш, блядь. Тобі, я не знаю, тебе диви.
Завтра вже буде свіженьку воду пити.
Now, the video's gotten out of slideshow mode. I was sitting here, I wasn't going to say anything, but now it looks like it is. So I'm going to back it up a little, please. Alright, there we go. So you can see that the hole's now been dug 6 feet deep, and you can see that the mud down there is much muddier, I guess you could say. Oh, you know, that's not really a actual scientific assessment, but you can see that it seems to be more moist down there than it was in the trench above. And the man is saying that he's actually reached the water table, which in some areas of Ukraine, the altitude that the ground's at is so low that it is plausible that a water table could be just that much lower than the trench itself. So it appears that this man, in fact, used a dowsing rod correctly, and he's now going to actually have a full-sized functioning well within their trench tomorrow.
Я собі, да, посилюєш, блядь. Тобі, я не знаю, тебе диви.
Завтра вже буде свіженьку воду пити. В окопі, ребята, в окопі, блядь.
Васильович знайшов в окопі воду, риє криницю, блядь.
So, that's the end of the video, but we can see that this old man here apparently is in connection with his Cossack ancestors, with the method he used to find the water, and then actually being right was the ultimate icing on the cake. We're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a Russian on meth. I don't know where this was, but this video was supposedly taken today, and we can see a female Russian soldier apparently tweaking. I don't know where she was, but she is completely zonked. Apparently, this may be the biolabs that the Russians were looking for, and it looks like the Russian soldiers got a little bit of a snootful, and it looks like they weren't able to handle the stuff. Here's the video.
Ну нахуй, походу, под таким кайфом, это просто жесть.
You see, she's acting pretty bizarre.
Блять, как можно было нахреначиться с утра? Вот как таких дур берут, да, блять, в армию? Вообще жесть. Ты снимаешь, да?
Да. Посмотри, что она творит. Посмотри, что она творит. Ужас.
I think she's no longer combat effective, but we'll of course check up on her in a few days and see if she's gotten over her massive tweaking thing right there, because she is maxed out on the meth. With that, we're now going to move on to the next one, where we've seen a sniper team get wiped out by a Ukrainian 61mm mortar. This drone apparently has an infrared camera on it and found this Russian sniper team somewhere on the side of a road. It then coordinated the artillery fire, which wiped out the sniper team. Here's the video. You can now see the sniper team being hit directly by the 61mm artillery shells, most likely knocking out that crew or killing them entirely. Once again, incredible news to hear, as sniper teams are something very similar. I guess you could say they're the older version of the Ukrainian drone tactics, where you're scaring soldiers into low morale because they don't really know whenever they're going to be killed. Drones kind of carry out that task nowadays, as the drones that the Ukrainians use are so small that they can hardly be heard and rarely seen, as they drop bombs onto Russian soldiers and kill them without any advanced warning. Snipers pretty much do the same job in a way, and so we can see that the Ukrainians are ensuring that the Russians will not be able to carry out on what the Ukrainians have a wheelhouse in. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Ukrainian soldier using an M107. I've also seen a similar kind of 50 caliber gun called an M82, so I would like to make sure to make that correction on stream, just in case if that was an incorrect assumption. As we can see here, here's an M82 50 caliber gun, and it does actually appear to be very similar. Let's pull up the M107 and see if that is a similar, if not identical, variant to that 50 caliber rifle. They actually appear to be practically the same. I'm sure that there's some kind of difference in between the two that's leading them to have a different identification, but it may be something small. For example, how the actual pistons work within the gas reciprocating system in the gun. I'm not really an expert on that stuff. I have had semi-automatic guns before, but I've never really gotten into the nitty-gritty of how the piston system works and the naming and the labeling of all the pieces and parts of it. But we can still see some kind of 50 caliber rifle being used. Whether it's actually an M107 or an M82, I'm not particularly sure, although I will err on the side of caution and agree with the caption and say that this is an M107. We can now see the Ukrainian fire the rifle and also shoulder the recoil of this 50 caliber rifle incredibly well. Honestly, he kind of handled the recoil much like one would with a 30-06. So, very happy for this guy for having great recoil control. And also, what a wonderful gun. This 50 caliber rifle here can actually knock out a BMP-2 if aimed accurately and into the correct spots. So that lets you know, first off, how powerful a 50 caliber rifle can be, and second off, how weak an armored personnel carrier is that the Russians are typically using for it to be knocked out by such a gun. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see Ukrainian child soldiers. The Ukrainians have hit absolute levels of depravity here. Putting children into a war is unacceptable. I'm, of course, just playing. These kids are actually out on the street just having fun, and they're playing soldier. I believe it's most likely because of the ongoing war, and we can actually see them recount their stories of what's happened with them so far in the war, and I thought that this was a pretty nice video. We didn't have any dog videos today, so I found the next best thing, which was some funny little kids on a street corner that are playing military, and they've actually set up checkpoints. It's all really weird, and it's, well, not really weird, it's just kind of neat and a little funny. So here's the video.
Истребитель прилетает, бабах! Бабах! Потом...
3 рази скинув бомбу на цей заправку.
Потом ми всі такі в ванну без вікон, як раки, лягаємо і швидко, поки нема бабахів, швидко біжимо в підвал.
У нас ще там 2 блокпоста і там 1. У нас ще там 3. І отут 1. Ми взагалі увлеклися. Я предложив построїти блокпост, коли нам було скучно. І ми почали грати воєнних. Нам його папа предложив зробити тероборону отут. Він нам зробив спочатку подони. Я йожики спочатку сам зробив.
Ні, мені не було страшно, тому що мені чувствувалось, що я мужик, і я не трусився, не плакав, не боявся. І я не боявся нічого, навіть як заправку зорвали, мост зорвали, я не боявся.
Ну я теж більш-менш не боявся, тому що я особливо боявся за маму та тата. Вони дуже багато бігали додому, і я за них дуже сильно боявся. Я за них дуже сильно боявся, щоб з ними нічого не случилось. А якщо міна, а якщо...
Now I gotta pause the video because I like how both of the kids apparently saw a military vehicle passing by and they saluted it. Let's play that part of the video again and then I'm gonna let it continue uninterrupted.
Вони дуже багато бігали додому, і я за них дуже сильно боявся.
I love that.
Я дуже сильно боявся, щоб з ними нічого не случилось. А якщо міна, а якщо осколки? Воно там мого друга, папа, царство йому небесне, він пішов до них пішком.
Воєнна.
Він пішов пішком, його там підстрелили. Путін перед старостю, він скоро помре, і захотілося йому щось таке зробити грандіозне. Путін такий, що він, він психований трошки, він якийсь псих. Розумієте, він таку дурість сотворив зараз. На великих конференціях в Росії вже дуже багато капітанів зізналися і просять вибачення за те, що вони вторглися в Україну, за те, що вони так побомбили все. І вони вже сознаються, що вони проіграли цю війну, бо Україна сильна і незламна. І вона...
And the video ends there, unfortunately. Of course, it's fun to listen to these kids. They're actually a very entertaining duo, and I think they do have a future in show business, actually. They are very engaging to listen to. Still, of course, there was a few cute, funny little things that they did. For example, saluting all of the military vehicles that passed by. And of course, we actually heard the Ukrainians honk back at them, the Ukrainian soldiers. So it's good to see that there's a little bit of camaraderie going on there in between the kids and the soldiers. And I would like to bring this back. Of course, I don't want to bring this down into a low area. Of course, this is supposed to be a fun video to watch. But kids like these little nice kids who are just trying to play games and they're, going to school and they're just growing up like normal kids. Several hundred of kids just like these have been killed by Russian barrages on multiple cities all around Ukraine. In particular, a large amount of them were killed in the Kramatorsk railway station attack that occurred nearly a month ago. And so, when people sit here, because I've seen a little bit of news today about some people here in the United States being apparently the opposition to supporting Ukraine, I could say. And I think it's very important for them to remember that these poor little kids like this, and hundreds of kids like them, are put at jeopardy of being killed every single day or have been killed at this point. And to think that poor little kids like these, as innocent as they are and as well-intentioned as they are, could have their lives cut short so quickly just because we didn't support the Ukrainian cause and help defend their country is sickening, to say the least. And I think that, if for anything, we should step in and make sure to provide as much support as possible to make sure that kids like these will actually grow up and have a future. We're now going to move on to the last bit of location unknown news, where we can see that the Czech Republic's Dana SPGs have finally arrived. Here in this video, we can see 152mm Dana SPGs, of course an incredibly competent system, much like the Caesar SPGs that the French delivered, of a somewhat different design. The gun is actually within a turret that's carried on a 8-wheeled chassis. But we can see these now moving around the Ukrainian front lines and hopefully being put to great use. With that, here's the video. And of course I have to mute it because it does have copyrighted music. Sorry about that. Here's the video. So that's the end of that video. Of course, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of audio, but we could just see them driving down a dirt road, one behind the other. And it's wonderful to see that a lot of foreign military vehicles that have been provided to the Ukrainians are now being seen on video, moving around the front lines and being used, and hopefully to great effect. And hopefully they all arrived just at the right time, or even before the right time, so that way the Ukrainians can be prepared for their upcoming offensives to push the Russians out of the country. We have seen that a large amount of ground has been made, and we're going to talk about that in the Kharkiv segment, but now we have covered all of the location unknowns, and we're going to move on to answer 3 questions from the chat, and then we're going to move into the huge news that we've gotten from Kharkiv. So if you're going to leave for the question segment, because some people do, make sure to come back incredibly soon, because this news is massive and tells us that our assessments of the Kharkiv area have been correct. With that, we're going to move on to the first question.
All right, and first up, we have a very generous $50 donation from BC Skyman, who is a longtime channel supporter. He says, should NATO expel Turkey due to their opposition to Sweden and Finland? Turkey is also keeping their beaches open to Russian tourism. I would make them a choice between NATO and Russia. Slava Ukraine, 76 days on here for me.
Well, thank you so much for the support. You've been here apparently since day 3, which has been an incredibly long time, and I do thank you for hanging in and also supporting Ukraine so much. To answer that question, I'm not really sure about if Turkey should be booted from NATO or not. Turkey is usually an unstable country, not economically, but politically, as they usually go through a coup about every decade, it seems, or even more frequently than a decade, more like every 5 years or so. It is a country that is important to NATO as a whole because it does hold a strategic position as the strait here. I'm not really sure if it's called the Istanbul Strait or the, let me think, the Bosphorus Strait. I'm not particularly sure which one that is. I haven't really gotten a good answer on that yet. But still, it does hold a strategic importance there, considering that if Turkey was booted out of NATO, they could retaliate and let Russian ships pass through the Bosphorus Strait or the Strait of Istanbul out into the Mediterranean Sea and then out into the rest of the world, or at least the Mediterranean at large. So in that instance, it wouldn't be a smart idea to kick Turkey out. On the other hand, it may be beneficial because now we're starting to see that the northeastern area of Europe, particularly Finland and Sweden, may be at jeopardy of having to defend themselves in the future from Russian aggression as well, much like the Ukrainians have had to. Although I don't believe that would be soon or even within the next few years, it does appear that they are now on the chopping block as far as the Russians are concerned, and so it is critically important to try and get them into NATO. And in that regard, I do think it would be important to try and boot Turkey out. But then the next question is, how many people are thinking like my first point? Because if other countries think that Turkey is a strategically important member, although if they were kicked out, Sweden and Finland could join, countries may just oppose them being kicked out for the sole reason that they have control over that strait, which will allow the Black Sea Fleet to travel out into the Mediterranean. So I think that's most likely the concerns that NATO is looking at right now. And I don't really want to weigh in if they should be kicked out or not, because that's a very difficult decision to make. And although we do want to operate on a large part in the heat of passion in a way and just get things done right now, in the long-term picture, that might be detrimental to the Western European security. So with that, I hope I've answered that question, and I do thank you very much for the support. With that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Gregory McClanahan, who says, thank you for these streams. I may have missed it, but do you have any thoughts or comments on the use and effectiveness of the 777 artillery? How many pairs of underwear do you think the invaders go through after hearing it?
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And to answer that question, I think that they're going through massive amounts of underwear because they're having to loot so many washing machines to try and clean the stuff up. To also move on to the next part of that question, we do know that the Ukrainians are apparently using a large amount of them. And according to official statements by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and the government as a whole, the M777s are being used to a large degree of success, apparently destroying Russian units without even taking any fire so much as a single drop of an artillery shell or a drone attack, which is telling us that their extended range beyond what a normal Russian artillery piece can fire from is a massive improvement and a massive benefit to the Ukrainians. So as far as to answer that part of the question, it seems that the Ukrainians are incredibly happy with their brand new shipment of weapons. So with that, I hope I've answered that question fairly well, and I do thank you so much for the support. It does help out this channel a lot. With that, we've now reached the end of this question segment. If you do send in a super chat, don't worry, we'll get to them by the end of the night. And if you would like to ask a question in the chat, feel free. We want to have a large amount of questions to pull from, so that way we can answer some more interesting and engaging ones. So make sure to throw in a question, and if you do, put @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt on it, because it helps Matthew to find the questions that are addressed to us. We're now going to move on to the Kharkiv area, and everyone hold on to your socks, because the news that's come out of the Kharkiv area is starting to show a massive change in Ukrainian strategy in that area, and it appears that the Russian line there has pretty much literally dissolved, much like I've been saying for the past few days. We're actually going to start off in Russia, because for the first time on film, we've seen that the Ukrainians have begun to shell villages inside of Russia itself. This is a village near Belgorod. This was actually shared to me by one of the viewers of the stream, and we can see here that MLRS fire, it seems, starts to fall right outside of this village. Now, one thing that's important to note is that there was a military vehicle right by this house on another video that I saw, and more context was added there in saying that the Ukrainians aren't just lashing out civilians, they are trying to hit military targets across the border now. With that, here's the video. Very interesting to see, and it's very crazy to think that the war is now being brought to Russia. Not just the occasional ballistic missile or cruise missile attack on an oil silo or some kind of munitions plant or some kind of ammo dump. Now we're starting to see MLRS fire being directed at actual Russian units on the ground inside of the borders of Russia. That is now taking the war to Russian territory, and I think that's going to start making its way around Russia in terms of the social circles, and people are going to start believing the Russian propaganda less and less and start looking at this war for what it is, which is an absolute failure. We're now going to move down to the Kharkiv front, and I'm saving this part for last. Y'all may see this finger-shaped part of the front line now, which has been a massive development, and we will get to that here in a second. So everyone, bear with me, but we're going to go through the news of what's been occurring on the more stabilized part of the front, as far as we know, and then we're going to get over to the area where the Ukrainians have pretty much parted the Red Sea. Starting off here on the most eastern side of the front, we can see the Ukrainians inspecting an abandoned BTR-80 in the area of this front line. This BTR-80 was abandoned after a successful ambush by the Ukrainians.
В ходе еще одной небольшой прогулочки вышло обнаружить очередную брошенную пидор-технику, которая перейдет на бег добра. Вот так вот видно, как эти герои просто текали из-под Харькова. Ванька тут разбросал все свои вонючие шмотки и убежал. Но ему повезло, он сумел убежать, в отличие от его дураковатых товарищей, которые там остались. Им не повезло. Да, вот такая вот техника тут кацапская стоит. Не знаю, зачем они сюда заезжали, на что они надеялись. Но это сейчас по всей Харьковской области, которая была подвержена оккупации, куда заходили пидор-войска. Видно, приходик был. Так что не факт.
We could hear the Ukrainian get a notification on his phone, and it was most likely an Amber Alert for all the Russian prisoners that were just taken. They said that they actually carted off all the Russian prisoners in a Ukrainian, actually a Russian MTLB that was hooked up to a Ukrainian tractor. And so keep an eye out, y'all, because apparently a large amount of Russian soldiers have now been kidnapped, and they're on the lookout for them.
Что здесь Ванька жив-здоров. Вот тут попадание было. Так, что тут кинул? Такс. Терминал тактический, формуляр. Вот это говно, которое они едят. Ели, точнее, немножко БК-5.
We can now see him inspecting the remains of equipment and supplies that are on the ground. We can actually see a single boot here. Very interesting to note.
Ванька сапог потерял. Канистрочка. Топор. С топорами шли на завоевание. Но, как обычно, сталося не так, як гадалось. Тут ще БКшечка валяється. Ну ничего, лишним не будет. Подшаманит и поедет как новенькая давить пидорашек. Всем удачи, мира и добра.
With that, that's the end of the video. But as we can see here, another BTR-80 has been destroyed. We can actually see a direct hit. And of course, I wanted to run it through the first time without any commentary, so that way people who can understand Ukrainian can listen to the video fully. But we can actually see here an impact of a shell that actually bent the steel plating inwards and created a decently sized hole. I'm assuming that that's actually what knocked out the vehicle and led to it being abandoned, although it looks like the shot didn't actually make the vehicle brew up, as we don't actually see any visible evidence of massive fires on any part of the vehicle. I'm still assuming that that is the exact reason why this vehicle was abandoned in the shape it's in. So with that, we're now going to move further down the front towards the area of Ruski Tishki, where today we've seen mines were left in the area by the retreating Russians. These have been marked with some kind of a ribbon on the ground, and you can still see the actual, I guess you could say, pressure plates of these mines sticking above the ground, spray painted orange. Here's the video.
Це так званий мінний шлагбаум. Протитанкові міни виставили росіяни. Треба тут переходити дуже обережно.
So, of course, the Russians are doing their typical tactic, which is just mining the area and then leaving. Moving on to the next bit of news from the area, we can see that an Mi-28 was shot down in the area near Kharkiv. Of course, Mi-28s are one of the best helicopters in the Russian fighting force. The Ka-52 and the Mi-28NM are practically the newest helicopters that the Russians are able to field. And we've now seen another one of those best helicopters in their force shot down over the Kharkiv area. Here's the video.
Це російський гелікоптер Мі-28 або нічний мисливець, один з найсучасніших російських гелікоптерів, підбитий під Харковом. Скоріше за все, пілоти не вижили, але коли ми прийшли на це місце, їх тут не було. Тобто росіяни, скоріше за все, встигли їх евакуювати. Але тут ми знайшли цікаві речі. Ну, я не кажу про озброєння, про блоки некерованих ракет і протитанкових керованих систем. Вони не зробили жодного пострілу, тобто гелікоптер не встиг навіть атакувати українські позиції.
That's the end of the video, but you can see that another one of Russia's best helicopters has been shot down, and of course that is a loss that the Russians will not be able to recover from, as they have lost the ability to produce new military equipment due to the crippling economic sanctions levied by the Western world. We're now going to move on to the next clip of news from the Kharkiv area, where we can see that the Mi-28 has actually been joined by its older predecessor, the Mi-24. Here in this clip, we can see that the tail rotor is apparently still freely rotating, which is something new that we've seen, as an intact tail rotor section of an Mi-24, or really any Russian helicopter for that matter, over the course of the war, where the tail rotor is still freely rotating, is something we have not seen before. So very interesting qualitative observation, but as you can see, the rest of the helicopter has kind of turned into the charcoal at Mr. Lunchtime's barbecue party. With that, here's the video. You can see one of the rocket pods here, stripped apart and destroyed, sitting in the field. And you can see the spinning tail rotor right there.
Блін, не опасний. Як то цигани ще в опас не вкрали. Дивись, ще ракети є. Теплонавідні.
It's very interesting to see that while the war is still raging on, it looks like Ukraine is looking for green new sources of energy, as it looks like they've now installed a new windmill out here in this field. And yes, I did see that from the comments section. I actually thought that was a really good joke, so I repeated it. We're now going to move on to the biggest news that we've gotten today from the Kharkiv front. This is news that I've been looking for an incredibly long amount of time, and those of you who have been watching the stream for the past few days may notice that a massive change to this front line has been made. And surprisingly, we didn't get any official news on this from anywhere I could find. This was backup news stating that Ukrainian forces had made it to these locations. A counteroffensive was launched near Stary Saltiv, where the Ukrainians covered 10 miles per day over the course of 2 days and broke through the Russian lines, leading to a collapse of the front in that area and liberated the town of Stary Saltiv on the western side of the Donets River. From then, the Ukrainians were pushing northwards towards the Russian border, trying to push the Russians all the way back and off the western shore of the Donets River. Over the past few days, we've not gotten any information as to the developments in this area of the front line, but as of right now, we finally got some evidence to show that this counterattack actually reached all the way to the Russian border, and the Ukrainians have now split off the western side of all the Russian forces on the Donets River from a land connection through Ukrainian territory to the eastern side of their front lines east of the Donets River. And this official report by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense today, they reported that Ukrainian forces have been shelled in the villages of Ternova, Staritsia, and Irkutsk. If you would like to take a good look at that report, you can click on the link in the description below to the map, where you can see the report stating the names of these villages and Ukrainian soldiers being shelled there. This lets us know that the Ukrainians have now split the Russian line in two in Ukrainian territory, and the Kharkiv front is in the process of an entire collapse, as this area here was one of the most important flanks near the Kharkiv city, as the Russians could still push down towards Stary Saltiv and once again assault the ring road from here. They have now lost the initiative in this entire area on the eastern side of the Donets River, and it appears that the Russians have ceased their offensive activities along the rest of the lines, and they are most likely gearing up towards a retreat or a withdrawal from the area. Massive news, and I have to give a huge congratulations to the Ukrainians and their army for being able to achieve the impossible. The Russians went into this war with two major objectives. The first was to take or besiege the city of Kharkiv. The second was to take or besiege the city of Kiev. We've seen them fail their first objective of trying to take the city of Kiev within the first month of the war. Now, nearing the end of the third month of the war, well, really halfway towards or really near the end of the third month, we can see that the Russians have now failed on their objective of capturing or encircling the city of Kharkiv. This goes to show that the Russians are no longer in a position to win this war, as they've now failed to achieve the primary objectives that they went into this war with on day one. They've now had to shift their intentions entirely to war goals that they originally did not have, and that is to try and take the Donbass. I don't think that they will succeed in this operation, considering that they are now failing in an area of the front line that they have been in and fighting for since day one. I don't think that the situation will change, and I don't really think there's any way for them to recover the situation elsewhere. With this impressive and amazing news out of the way, we're now going to move further down the front line and tell all the soldiers of Kharkiv good luck and goodbye for today, as we will revisit them tomorrow and listen to the wonderful victories that they have had over the next day. I'm sure that there are many victories to follow, as a Russian withdrawal from this area is almost guaranteed. Moving down the front towards Izium, we can see that we've gotten one bit of news today, and that's Ukrainian Malkas at work in the area. They are apparently still firing large amounts of artillery at the Russian forces, who are still attempting to break the Ukrainian lines and start racing towards Slavyansk. As of today, that has still not happened, as the Ukrainians have been fervently holding them back and have been giving the Russians one hell of a fight. Here we can see that fight being taken to the Russians, as these 203mm Malka SPGs are firing at Russian forces. Here's the video.
Батареи! Залпом! Огонь! Осечка? Стой! Залп ушел! Ебать красивый залп!
You now see them using MLRSs. Much like the wide assortment of foods that Mr. Lunchtime puts on his dinner plates, we can see that the Ukrainians are not only using 203mm Malkas, but they're actually having a wide assortment of artillery being used in unison. We can see the Malkas firing, and then 2 MLRSs. They appear to most likely be some form of a Grad system or some tornado system firing as well. Hopefully, this will do a decent amount of damage to Russian forces in the area and cripple their offensive capabilities that we already know are nearly breaking. We're now going to move further down the front towards the area of Lyman, where today we've once again seen a continuation of the video series of the Ukrainian SU-25s patrolling the skies in the eastern area of Ukraine. Here's the video of that. Of course, it's a different perspective from yesterday, although I do believe that this video was most likely filmed the other day, but the video was uploaded today. We can now see one of the SU-25s fly right over. And of course, the Ukrainian Air Force is still kicking at least a little. It's very good to see, and it's wonderful to know that Russian propaganda claiming that the entire Ukrainian Air Force has been knocked out within the first few weeks of the war is entirely untrue. We've seen at least 2 Su-27s, 1 Su-24, and 2 Su-25s flying all within the same amount of time last week. We know that the Ukrainians still have at least 5 operational combat aircraft, and hopefully many more that we have not seen on film. We're now going to move to the next bit of news near Lyman, where we've seen the Ukrainians once again using MLRS systems to pound the Russians into submission and hopefully push them further back. Here's the video of a Verba MLRS being used. Of course, I'm going to have to mute this. It does have copyrighted music. But here's the MLRS firing. And you can now see the rockets on their way to hopefully knock out more Russian units. We're now going to move on to the next bit of news, which is further down the front and more towards the direction of Severodonetsk. We of course pay homage to one of the live chat's most popular figures in recent history on this channel, which is Mr. Lunchtime. This is where Mr. Lunchtime made his famous appearance, but today it doesn't appear that Mr. Lunchtime is here. It appears that there is now footage from Ka-52s in operation in this area. We can now see the rocket once again firing at the high angle, very typical of Russian helicopters to do. It gives the rockets an increased amount of range, but a decreased amount of accuracy, meaning they'll most likely hit a large amount of residential areas, which is of course a war crime. We can now see that the second camera on the footage has gone into slideshow mode, which is something that we face here on this channel a lot, but we can see that the infrared camera is still operational. With that, that's the end of the video. One thing I like to say is that with the slideshow quality of the left side camera here on this clip, I'm sure that Russian after-action reports are incredibly eventful, as the pilots pretty much have to recount slide by slide what's going on, much like it's a Charlie Chaplin silent film. We're now going to move on further down the front lines to the next area of news, where we've seen near the town of Orlivka today, the Ukrainians destroy another ammo dump. Once again, the destruction of ammo, supplies, and equipment is very important for the Ukrainians to continue doing during the course of this war, as destroying ammo and ammo, fuel, and other miscellaneous equipment, of course, will lead to Russian combat units grinding to a halt, as they no longer will be able to pursue military operations anywhere within the country, either in the offense or the defense. With that, here is the video. And now, everyone take a sip. This thing's got copyrighted music, so I'm going to have to just let y'all know, and I'm going to have to mute this real quick. So, here's the video. You can see the ammo dump down there smoldering, burning, and exploding, which is, of course, all the signs of dozens of tons, if not hundreds of tons, of Russian ammo no longer being used. That is the end of the video. Of course, wonderful to see more ammo dumps being destroyed by the Ukrainians. We're now going to move further down the front, where we've seen that The Enemy at the Gates is apparently an incredibly popular movie in the Donbass, and we can now see that there's a large amount of LARPers also trying to get in on that Enemy at the Gates action. Here we can see some DPR reserves that have now been brought to the front lines that are using exclusively Mosin Nagants, shush helmets, and generally what looks to be World War II era equipment. Of course, I'm not talking about the body rig, but the uniforms themselves kind of looking old. Here's the video. I think that reenactors are actually better equipped for the most part in Civil War era uniforms than these guys are in the DPR and LPR modern day uniforms. I think, actually, honestly, my reenacting group, if using live ammo, could give these guys a run for their money. So, with that, that's of course hilarious to see that they're so poorly equipped that their reserves are now being brought up and they literally look like Enemy at the Gates. Let's pull that up real quick. Take a look at these guys here. Of course, the radio isn't really era accurate, but let's pull up Enemy at the Gates and take a good look in comparison. So, let me try and find the best one I can. Man, I'm gonna have to go up to this one here. Not really the best one. Actually, I think this one would be better. See right there? See right there? Solid match. They're reenactors on the front lines. Gotta say, one hell of a show right there. We're now going to move on downwards towards Mariupol, where we can see that some more news has unfolded down here. That is, of course, of note. Here we can see a 2S4 firing in the area of Mariupol, most likely within the town itself. The 2S4 is a heavy mortar. I'm not exactly sure as to the caliber, but you can see that the mortar is so sizable that it must be carried and used off of the chassis of some kind of armored vehicle. That gives you an idea of the size of this mortar and most likely the explosive yield of the charge. With that, we've reached the end of the news of Mariupol for today. We haven't gotten any news by and large from either side, which is telling me that the front line may be stabilizing within this area, but we will, of course, be waiting to hear some more official news, because I don't exactly want to say that with certainty until we can get something to verify it. So take that statement with a grain of salt until we can get some news to show that. And with that, we've reached the end of the Kharkiv and Donbass news. Well, actually, hang on, correction. For some reason, I'm thinking that we're on last night's schedule. We're not. We're actually going to continue on with the news, cover the rest of the news here in the southern front, around the country, and go to President Zelensky's speech, and then we will go back to a question segment. We're now going to move further west throughout the country, where we've now seen that the front line has been adjusted on this map to show that Russian forces are actually in the area south of Kryvyi Rih and west of the Dnieper River. Here we can see that the Ukrainian forces have wiped out Russian vehicles today. Once again, apparently a Lear 2 electronic warfare vehicle, which is, of course, a wonderful loss for the Ukrainians to claim. Here we can see the footage of the drone flying over and surveying the area for the Russian vehicles. We can now see an artillery shell land in between two apartment buildings. They appear to be commie blocks, most likely. We can now see the drone trying to take a look at the damage and see if the Russian vehicle within those two buildings has been hit. Well, you now see the drone standing off at a distance, looking at the smoldering remains of what may be a vehicle that was in between the buildings, or the smoke still billowing up from the area of the explosion. We can now see the Lear 2, as we can see here, that actually spells out in Cyrillic, the Lear 2, right there. And we can also see some kind of a, machine, Braga, I'm not exactly sure what that's saying. But we do know that the Lear 2 is up here near this part of the building. We can now see a civilian car racing down the street at an incredibly high speed. I'm not sure if that's a Russian commandeered civilian vehicle, but it is moving at around 60 to 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour. We now see the vehicle pulling over on the side of the road. Shtava. I'm not sure what that means. Unfortunately, I don't know Russian nor Ukrainian all too well. I believe that is a Russian commandeered vehicle because we can see a minivan within the gates of that house, also marked with Z on the hood. So I'm believing that was a military commandeered civilian vehicle. With that, that is the end of the video. You can see that I watch a lot of Seinfeld, actually, because there's nothing but Seinfeld clips there. But anyways, we could see that the Ukrainians did manage to knock out a Lear 2 electronic warfare vehicle, along with damaging several others. Of course, wonderful to see, and that will hinder the Russian efforts south of Kryvyi Rih for quite some time. We're now going to move further down to the area directly east of Mykolaiv. If you were to go straight east on the, let me make sure I'm correct in saying this, the T-15 08, you'll actually see that the Ukrainians today have attacked the 42nd Motor Rifle Division of the Russian Army. Here you can see footage from the Russian side of this attack unfolding. It's very interesting to see, and so here's the video. Before we move on, I have to discuss something heinous I just saw in the chat. I just saw Simsim say Seinfeld sucks, and all I've got to say is no soup for you. Anyways, we're getting back to the video.
Здесь еще ебанули. Только ебанули, бля. Наши, не наши, блядь. Ёбаный рот, блядь. Надо ебашить отсюда, сейчас БК ебанет, блядь.
We can now see the BTR trying to move out of here. We can see the speech to text at the bottom of the screen, saying that they've been under attack for quite some while.
Просто пиздец. Разъёб полный, блядь. Чё, не работает пушка? Не так. Рот, блядь.
Well, now we can hear them strip the BTR-82's transmission right there, and so I don't think they'll be going much farther. We could actually see recounts from the Russian infantryman inside that vehicle that things were going very poorly for them. They had been attacked for hours on end, and apparently they had been taking losses, which was leading the crew to seem pretty stressed out. That's the end of the video, but it is showing a very grim picture of what the Russian forces are facing west of the Dnipro River in the area that they control north of Kherson. With that, we're now going to move into the Snake Island area, where we've seen satellite footage today confirm that Russian losses are actually visible from space. We can actually see a large amount of the ships that have been destroyed in this area. For example, the landing craft that was struck and sank at its moorings is right there below the sea. We can actually see another landing craft apparently floated right over it and took its place, which is interesting to note, and hopefully we can actually make a little artificial coral reef right there out of all the landing craft that the Russians will continuously just bring to the same spot. In the next picture, we can actually see a large amount of damage to the installations on Snake Island, which appear to have been completely leveled at this point, as well as the helicopter that was hit some while ago and has now been burned to a crisp. In this last picture, we can see that away from Snake Island, there is apparently some burning boat, most likely right here where my mouse cursor is circling, another burning boat up here, and then a boat that is apparently running a circle around this one boat that is here burning at sea. Wonderful to see, and I am glad to know that the Ukrainians are inflicting massive amounts of damage on the Russians that have now pretty much commandeered Snake Island. I'm very happy to know that once again, the Snake Island curse is carrying through, as not only the ships that were involved with these capture of Snake Island have now suffered pretty terrible fates, specifically the Moskva. Now we can see that the ground forces of the Russian Army, Marines, and the Navy that are now occupying this island are also facing pretty tough, perilous, or deadly fates as well. And so I believe that there is some kind of curse for Snake Island as far as the Russians are concerned. We're now going to move on to the news from the rest of the country, and then finally to the address from President Zelensky. Here in the city of Lviv today, I believe that is the correct pronunciation, we can see a sad yet sweet story unfold. This family in this picture here was actually one of the families at the Kramatorsk railway station that was attacked some time ago. For those of y'all who may not remember, a Tochka ballistic missile fired from the Russian forces landed near the railway station at Kramatorsk and was then preceded by another Tochka missile. These two Tochka missiles killed some 50 civilians and wounded hundreds. Out of those 50 civilians that were killed, several of them were children. The videos and pictures that came out of the carnage at the Kramatorsk railway station was absolutely atrocious, and most likely one of the worst instances of a war crime that has actually been captured on film, from the very first rocket landing to the children with their heads split in two by some of the shrapnel blasts from these rockets, being laid down on benches as some of their parents who were still alive wailed in horror and agony at the absolute terror that the Russians had now inflicted on them and their families. Out of this unfortunate story, there was a silver lining. A mother and her children survived the attack. Although they did survive the attack, it appears that one of the children has actually lost both of their legs, and the mother has lost one as well. Here we can see the child who's lost both of her legs, and the mother who's lost one. And we can see the other child, it appears the son over here, who seems to largely be okay. Which is, of course, fortunate, and it is good to see that although they did suffer an incredibly traumatic experience, that they are still a family, and that they're all still alive. Of course, a lot of people at the Kramatorsk railway station didn't have the fortune of living through the same fate. There were a lot of them who never walked away or ever saw the light of day past the Kramatorsk railway station. And I hope that a lot of people remember those civilians and remember that when they think about supporting Ukraine, because those are the people at the end of the day that will be helped out, or those poor innocent civilians and children that we've seen time and time again over the course of this war, and a family much like this one. We're now going to move to the end of the news for today and wrap up today's stream with, of course, the speech from the President of Ukraine. With that, here is the address from President Zelensky.
Славні народи нашої найпрекраснішої країни, наші захисники, наші захисниці. Сьогодні можемо відзвітувати про 200-й збитий російський військовий літак. Стільки авіації Росія не втрачала у жодній війні за десятки років. А ще Росія втратила майже 27 тисяч солдатів, багато з них молоді строковики. Росія втратила більше 3 тисяч танків, броньованих машин, велику кількість звичайних військових машин, гвинтокрили, безпілотники та усі свої перспективи як держава. Заради чого це все? Щоб тимчасово окупованому Геніческу ще трохи постояв пам'ятник Леніну? Жодного іншого результату у Росії немає і не буде. Насправді ніхто сьогодні не може передбачити, як довго буде ця війна. Але ми робимо все для того, щоб можна було звільнити нашу землю швидко. Саме в цьому наш пріоритет. Кожного дня працювати так, щоб війна була коротшою. Однак це залежить не тільки від наших людей, на жаль, які і так викладаються, якщо чесно, по максимуму. Це залежить від інших партнерів, від європейських країн, від країн усього вільного світу. Я вдячний усім, хто працює на посилення санкцій проти Росії і на збільшення оборонної та фінансової підтримки для нас, для України. Саме це єдиний рецепт захисту свободи в умовах вторгнення Росії. І для західних держав це не просто витрати, це не про бухгалтерію, це про майбутнє. Світ вже визнав, що блокада Росією наших портів і ця війна провокують масштабну продовольчу кризу. Російські посадовці ще й відверто погрожують світу тим, що у десятках держав буде голод. А якими можуть бути наслідки такого голоду? До якої політичної нестабільності і до яких міграційних потоків це призведе? Скільки тоді доведеться витратити, щоб подолати наслідки? Ось на які питання потрібно відповідати тим, хто гальмує санкційні пакети проти Росії або намагається відкласти надання допомоги Україні. Кожен день війни – це посилення глобальних загроз, це нові можливості Росії провокувати нестабільність в інших регіонах світу, і не тільки тут, в Європі. І це нові втрачені життя України, українців, українок, які віддають найдорожче, щоб вільно жити могли абсолютно всі. Я підкреслюю це всі, зокрема, і у тих країнах, де досі знаходять час посперечатись, замість того, щоб максимально вкладатися у допомогу. Тому тиску на Росію потрібно значно більше, і я про це кажу дуже відверто і щоденно усім, від кого це залежить. Продовжуємо відновлювати деокуповані території України. Станом на сьогодні деокуповано вже 1015 населених пунктів, плюс 6 за минулу добу. Повертаємо туди електрику, водопостачання, зв'язок, транспорт, соціальні послуги. Це важливо. Звичайно, ми пам'ятаємо про кожне місто і кожну громаду, які ще перебувають в окупації. Херсон, Мелітополь, Бердянськ, Енергодар, Маріуполь і всі міста і містечки Донбасу. Поступово звільнення Харківщини доводить, що ми нікого не залишимо ворогу. Не припиняємо намагань врятувати з Маріуполя та Азовсталі усіх наших людей. Наразі продовжуються дуже складні перемовини про наступний етап евакуаційної місії, вивезення важкопоранених медиків. Йдеться про велику кількість людей. Звичайно, робимо все, щоб евакуювати і усіх інших, кожного нашого захисника і захисницю. Вже задіяли для відповідних переговорів усіх в світі, хто може бути найбільш впливовими посередниками. Вже 37 іноземних представництв відновили свою роботу в Києві. Я вдячний усім з них, бо це 37 доказів того, що Україна стоїть міцно і має перспективи на відміну від Російської Федерації. Впевнений, що скоро ще й інші іноземні представниці повернуться до столиці. Варто повертатися до роботи і всьому українському бізнесу, який ще не відновив діяльність, хоча може це зробити на безпечній території. Забезпечувати робочі місця, прилаштовувати економічну активність під наявні умови. Це також робота велика на оборону, на наше майбутнє. Традиційно підписав указ про нагородження наших героїв. Державними нагородами відзначено 212 військовослужбовців Збройних сил України. Вічна слава кожному і кожній, хто захищає нашу державу. Вічна пам'ять усім, хто віддав своє життя за Україну. Слава Україні!
With that's the end of the address from President Zelensky, and once again, the end of the news for today on day 79 of the war in Ukraine and the past 24 hours. Once again, it's been another wonderful past 24 hours of Ukrainian victories, Ukrainian success, and a very interesting turn in events internationally as Belarus now appears to be giving a decent amount of sympathy and support to the Ukrainian armed forces, and that may be leading into a large amount of support in general by the Belarusians of the Ukrainian effort. With that, that concludes day 79's news. I thank you all so much who were just here for the news, for watching, and if you are new to this channel and have just gotten to the stream tonight, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. These streams do come on every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single day of the week, except for Mondays. So if you would like to keep up to date with what's going on in the war of Ukraine, make sure to hop onto this channel and make sure to subscribe. We also run daily summaries as well, which is something that is new, but we have been doing it for around the past 10 days. So once again, I thank you all so much for watching, and we're now going to move on to the questions segment and answer everyone's questions who put in a super chat, and also some questions from the live chat as well. And once again, if you would like to have your question answered, make sure to put @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt starting off the question, and then ask your question so that way Matthew can take a look at it and put it down in his ledger of questions that could be answered. So with that, we're now going to move on into the question segment.
All right, and first up, we have a $20 donation from Will Riley, who says, Russia is the world leader in fertilizer exports. Who knew that Russian soldiers was the active ingredient? Only one person knew, Dick Cheney.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, William, and I have to say, it appears that the Russians have a very special ingredient to their fertilizer, and it appears that it works very well with sunflower seeds. So I thank you once again for the support, and I do have to agree. I think Dick Cheney was the only one in the world to know that. And of course, Dick Cheney is one of the most interesting men in the world. So I thank you very much for the support. And I also thank you very much for the little joke there. It does appear to be true. And on a serious note, the Russians have been taking massive casualties. I have been seeing some people saying that the Ukrainians are taking massive casualties as well now, so they're gearing up towards an offensive. But as far as my information has been able to collect, that's not necessarily the case. And that may be another Russian propaganda attempt in a way, much like they were saying that the United States was running out of Javelin missiles and arms themselves, like that would ever happen. And so I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Krister Peterson, who says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine to you as well, Heroam Slava, and I thank you so much for the support. Of course, we almost specialize entirely on the war in Ukraine here on this channel, but we are working on that video in the background, and it will be out very soon. Also, that video was supposed to be planned to come out at 50,000 subscribers, but we blew past 50,000 subscribers, and we're near around 58,000 right now, so unfortunately, it's not going to be the 50,000 subscriber special video. It's just going to be a video that comes out probably around 60,000 subscribers. Very weird landmark, well, kind of like landmark event to do it at, but still, it will be out very soon, and that will actually be my face reveal. So I hope you enjoy that, and I thank you so much for enjoying this channel, and also, once again, Slava Ukraine. And with that, thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And just real quick, folks, just a quick note. We do like to keep U.S. politics out of the chat. It is a nuisance to most of our viewers. They like to avoid talking about politics. So if y'all would be so kind as to just leave that out of the chat, we'd very much appreciate it. Y'all have good points and good conversations, but we'd like to save that for another time, if you would please. So up next, we have a $20 donation from Douglas Newman, who says, thanks for the great coverage. You are all doing a great job.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I am glad that you do enjoy our coverage. I put a lot of work every day into making sure that this news is as accurate as possible, although some things, of course, do slip through here and there. But I do thank you very much for enjoying the quality, and I try my best to deliver the finest news as possible about what's going on and keeping people as best informed. And so, I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for appreciating it. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Cult member who says, it's my birthday. Can I have a song?
I'm not really good at singing, but I think you could probably, well, you know what? I'll just do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Cult member. Happy birthday to you. And I hope that appeases you, and I do thank you so much for the support. It does help us a lot, and it helps to keep the channel running. And so with that, thank you once again, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And Enforcer, that was absolutely legendary. That will probably go down in channel history. So up next, we have an $18 donation from Private Lunchtime, who says, hey guys, as my username is NSFW, you can call me Private Lunchtime, which I have. He says, I have a dream that once Ukraine wins in Ukraine, The Russians will defect and en masse, and together they will all march on Moscow and topple the regime. Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, but I'm not entirely sure about that. That is something that I would consider mostly idealistic. Although I do understand the I guess you could say, what would be the correct term for that? The idea behind it, like the idealistic goal. I don't think that would necessarily be possible. Usually when regimes fall, it's actually the civilians that overthrow the government and not necessarily some kind of a military coup from the lower ranks. And also, if it is a military coup, usually those are entirely kept within the upper ranks, so that way it's a very small group of people who are incredibly influential and they can keep it secret, and then they kind of just quietly overthrow the government. But I do thank you very much for the support. Hopefully some kind of coup or an overthrow will occur once this war ends in disaster for the Russians. And so I do thank you very much for the support, and I do kind of agree with the sentiments, but I don't really agree in the way it will most likely be executed. But once again, that's just me in my opinion, and I could be wrong. It could happen the way you're thinking or not. Who knows? But thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from The Strategist 777, who says, I sit and watch silently 3 or 4 nights a week when I can. I wanted to say you have done a great job, and we appreciate the nightly sacrifice a college student would be making to do something like this.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and it does help out this channel a lot. Now, I'm very appreciative of that a lot of people understand that I do spend a lot of time on this, and I do. Pretty much my entire afternoons are taken up doing this thing, but I'm more than happy to do it. 1, because it's supporting Ukraine. 2, we run Sunday fundraisers. 3, a lot of y'all enjoy this so much, and that makes it all the worthwhile for me to come back on here and keep on doing it, knowing that a lot of people are finding value in this, and people who I never thought would find value in this thing. And also, the last thing is that it's always fun to, of course, just talk with the chat. This is actually one of the funner parts of the stream for me, because while covering the news is important, I just like I guess you could say shooting the bull, I guess you'd like to call it, at the end, because I don't really feel a lot of pressure to try and deliver things perfectly here, because it's just, just kind of like chit chat time. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I'm very happy that you do enjoy these streams. So thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have an $18 donation from Jips, who says, I think Putin is pretending he has cancer or he is sick. It's some kind of trick. No way he'd sit down with a blanket on him on V-Day unless he was acting. What do you think about news reports that he's dying of blood cancer?
It is highly possible. We do know that he has had some run-ins with cancer before, and I do think that at the moment it appears that he's showing some signs of some very serious sickness. Of course, I hope and wish for the best for everyone involved, and I hope that he does reach the grave sooner than later. So I thank you very much for the support. Of course, it's very hard to confirm his medical situation, considering we have no official medical reports of it, rather than the thyroid cancer he had some while ago. And now we're not really sure what kind of cancer he has, although we can tell that he has some kind of ailment going on that's making him look incredibly sick. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that answers the question, and we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Fat Wong 36, who says, actually, we've already covered that. Hopefully, we don't get a flood of messages again. He says, where's everyone from?
Well, we're about to see the chat go 900 miles an hour, but if y'all would like to say where you're from, feel free. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be like, hey, yo, put on the slow chat. We've already got the slow chat on. Slow chat's, I think at a minute per message, isn't it, Matthew?
Actually 30 seconds right now.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, it's about to go 1,000,000 miles an hour. So just be ready, everyone. Here comes the swarm, and the live chat's about to purge itself in a minute. But if you would like to say where you're from, that would be pretty cool, once again, to see where everyone in the Lee Spring Army is from. We have a lot of American viewers, but we also have a lot of international viewers as well. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And real quick, before the chat goes wild, let me grab that last super chat before I lose it.
Oh, it's going. It's going. It's off, man, to the races.
Wow, it's insane. But next up, we have a $10 donation from Lynn DeBazio, who says, let's try this again. I don't think my super chat went through yesterday. How do you tell the difference between an MLRS and a TOS-1 specifically? They look the same to me.
Well, here's the difference between an MLRS and a TOS system. A TOS is almost always, if not always, mounted onto a T-72 chassis. So when you take a look at a TOS-1 system, and it does look like I'm correct, they were always mounted on a T-72. So that's what a TOS looks like. In MLRS, there's multiple different kinds of MLRSs at different calibers. For example, you have the BM-21 Grad, which is a truck-mounted rocket launcher. You also have a Smerch rocket launcher as well. And there's multiple others, but I'm going to try and like summarize this as best as I can. But you can see here that both of the MLRS systems are mounted on some kind of a truck chassis. For example, the Smerch and also this Grad here in this picture. Meanwhile, the TOS, which is a thermobaric missile launcher, is mounted onto a T-72 chassis. And that's really how I'm differentiating MLRSs from TOSs, is simply because a TOS MLRS system is mounted onto a T-72. So with that, I hope I've answered that question. That's really the easiest way to identify a TOS versus a normal MLRS. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that clarifies the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Junebug72, who says, thank you.
And thank you so much for the support. It is, of course, wonderful to know that a lot of people do enjoy these streams, and I do get a lot of joy out of knowing that people do enjoy the amount of work and effort I put into delivering this news. So thank you once again for enjoying it, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, an authentic captured Russian vehicle with leaf springs for the Leaf Spring Army. Not sure appropriate to post a link. Leaf Spring Russian 1918 quad captured in Ukraine 2022.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and it would be neat if you did share that with me over my Discord DM. I would like to see that, and of course, I would like to oogle over Leaf Springs, because that is what the Leaf Spring Army is all about. So I thank you so much once again for the support, Hoodoo, Texas, and I would love to see that. And so, thank you so much for the support, and also bringing that to my attention. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Raphael Harris, who says, Enforcer, how sweet will it be when Ukrainian forces drive Russians out of Azovstal and Ukraine can hold onto Mariupol and sea access? Zelensky has maintained unity with his one-fist policy.
I do agree that Zelensky has held unity incredibly well during this time of emergency. It's been a very tricky time for the Ukrainians, and things have been carried out and conducted in a way that the Ukrainians as a nation have survived. And that is something really impressive on its own, because no one expected that to happen. Moving on to the first part of that question, it will be something to see if the Azov manages to push the Russians out of the defensive perimeter again and reestablish it around the entirety of the plant. If they're able to do that, that means that this siege will go on until this war ends, most likely. As while we don't know about the supply situation, if they're able to push them out, even after they've breached the perimeter, that's giving you an incredibly good idea about the fighting qualities of the Azov Battalion and the 36th Infantry Brigade and what they're going up against, which is most likely DPR, LPR, Chechens, or Russian infantry forces. So with that, I hope that answers the question, and I do thank you very much for the support. It does help out this channel a lot, and it goes a long way. With that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from a channel regular, BC Skyman, who says, my wife is from Kiev and she has a large collection of Ukrainian vintage clothing and artifacts. We actually made a Ukrainian calendar 2 years running. I hope her latest shipment makes it here.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, BC Skyman, and that's incredibly cool to hear about Ukrainian vintage clothes. I'm not particularly sure what era you're talking about. I'm not sure if you're talking about like the 1700s and the early 1800s period of Ukrainian history, because if you're talking about those vintage clothes, I do know what you're talking about. I love those shirts. They're incredibly neat. They're much like the typical working shirt in Western Europe during that time, but at the same time, they have a very nice pattern on the front side of the shirt, kind of close to the opening. So I thank you very much for the support and sharing that with us, and that is something really cool to hear, and I hope the shipment does arrive, because it's pretty neat stuff, really, as a culture, and the Ukrainians certainly have an impressive and interesting culture. And with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Mark Sova, who says, Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, and thank you so much for the support. It does help us out a long way into continuing to run this channel. So with that, thank you once again, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from B. Dobson, who says, give Orc iPhone, target them, Android's probably better.
Well, thank you very much for the support. And yes, I do believe that the Russian soldiers should be given some kind of phone by the West, so that way we can track them down and make sure to strike them. So I thank you very much for the support, and I do get where you're coming from. That's actually something that they had a map out for yesterday, showing the Russian forces' positions based off of their SIM cards that were active inside of Ukraine. So thank you once again for the support, and the idea is, of course, a pretty good one that I think they're already trying to implement in a way. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have another $10 donation from Mark Sova, who says, Ukraine drone pilot CNN. They use DJI for reconnaissance and then send in Bayraktars. He said the Russians received data from the Chinese on where the drones depart, and the Russians used to direct artillery.
I thank you very much for the support, but I don't think that's entirely true, because we have seen a large amount of DJI drones still being used by the Ukrainians on film, even up to this day. And while that is something that we heard for a bit, I don't think it's true, because the Ukrainians supposedly gave out a notice to all their units to stop using Mavic drones. Yeah, we still see them using Mavics en masse. So while that may be stated somewhere, I'm not really sure if that's actually what's happening on the ground, because our video evidence is showing that really no unit has stopped using the Mavic drones. And I do think it would be kind of weird for the DJI company to be handing over that information to the Russians, and for it to still be accurate by the time that information has been relayed from Ukraine to China, to the DJI company, the information then compiled and then sent to the Russians, and then for that information to make it to some kind of intelligence bureau within the Russian government, and then be disseminated down through the command structure, and then to the artillery. And you have to remember, all of this has to work perfectly for it to happen. And then the coordinates be relayed to the artillery, and then that artillery be kind of like honed in, a couple of I guess you could say aiming shots fired, and then they start unleashing a salvo. By the time all of that happens, I feel like so much time has passed that that drone operator has moved on from that area, and it's most likely no longer effective. That's just kind of looking at it through what I would believe would be a logical standpoint, because the relaying of that information from one place to the other and then finally to the Russians to then disseminate down the chain of command would take an incredibly long amount of time, just logically speaking. So I thank you very much for the support. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true about the DJIs. And we also know that they're not just using Bayraktars alone. They've apparently created a large amount of larger civilian drones that have now been converted into pretty much small bombers that carry around a load of little bomblets and then just drop them on the Russians at random. It's almost like a sniper in modern terms, where no one's really having to be put at risk of being shot, but it's causing as much psychological harm and torture to the Russians that a sniper would. So I thank you very much for the support. That's kind of my assessment of it. And so thank you once again for the support, and it helps out this channel a lot. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we were just given a very, very generous $200 donation from Thomas Condon, who has been around for quite some time. He says, we all call this Putin's war. It's hard to imagine how in 2022, one man can cause so much pain and devastation for Ukraine, the Russian people, and the world. Can you provide color on these closest to Putin? Do they truly support him, or do they just fear him? Thanks for the great show.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for the massive amount of support. That helps out our channel a lot, and I'm always appreciative of people who do throw in a large amount of support, because that's the only way we keep our channel running. So thank you so much. And to answer that question, we do know a decent amount. While I don't really keep up to date on it perfectly, we are getting a pretty good idea of how the Russian command structure and the Russian allies are kind of viewing Putin, the people who are very close to him. The Russian oligarchs seem to not really be big fans of this war. As we know at the beginning, a large amount of the oligarchs actually left Russia by plane, by train, or by ship. Pretty much any way you could get out of the country, they were down for it. We know that a large amount of them went overseas to Western countries, which is the weird part. And then once the Western countries started to try and target them, it looks like they started to go back to Russia. But at the beginning, they were all for abandoning the ship. So to answer that question, we know that the oligarchs were not really big fans of this, and they've reluctantly had to return back to Russia, the few that have, and just try and sit around and act like they are on Putin's side, although they're probably not at all. We know that the Russian military command structure so far has not showed any falterings or failings, but you can tell by the way the lower Russian ranks are behaving in this war, sometimes surrendering because they just don't like what they're doing. You have to imagine that that kind of sentiment is carried up through the chain of command, at least in a small amount, all the way up to the top. So I can't really give an accurate assessment as to the Russian military and what they're thinking in the higher ranks, but in the lower ranks we can see that dissent and displeasure with what they're doing is very prevalent. Finally, in a nation like Belarus, which Lukashenko is very close to Putin in terms of an ally, one of the few allies that Russia still has, we can see that he's not at all for this war anymore, and it looks like he's actually trying to steer away from Putin and more in the direction of the Western nations, as today he's come out with praise for the Ukrainian military and what they're doing. That is not a stance you want to take when allied with the Russians. That would be like that'd actually be like Ukraine being a part of NATO and getting into this war, and then Poland goes, wow, Russia's doing such a good job at beating Ukraine. I love what they're doing. It's impressive, really. We ought to become friends with them and learn how they're doing this and try and be as good as them. That's kind of the stance that Belarus has now taken, and that's a major veering away from Putin. So I believe that they're actually all trying to get away from him as much as possible and now dissociate from him as best as they can. And so I think that the ones that are still there that really aren't doing that outright, kind of like Lukashenko is now starting to do, are actually there still because of fear and not really in actual support of them. Of course, there are people in the Russian government. It's not always a black and white picture, especially when talking about a large group of people. There are people in the Russian government who entirely support what Putin's doing, but I believe that that number is incredibly small because as the war is going on, we've heard a lot of public statements, even from higher up Russian political figures, that they don't really support the war nor the direction it's going in. And so, I thank you so much for the support once again, Thomas Condon. I hope that does answer the question to the best of my abilities, at least the information that I know about it. And once again, I would like to give the disclaimer to you that while I did say those things, and that's the information I know, some of it may be a little bit off. Of course, I'm not always an expert and a know-it-all on everything, and I don't really think anyone is, so I don't ever want to act like I'm just the oracle of truth and information. I could be wrong, but that's my assessment of the situation so far, and I do thank you so much for the massive amount of support. And so, I hope that answers the question, and we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Vance Hicks. Thank you very much for your support of the channel, Vance. We appreciate it very much. Up next, we have an $8 donation from CH, who says, hello from Canada. Excuse me. Did you see earlier this week that Ukraine confirmed that the Ghost of Kiev wasn't a single aircraft, but rather several? The people of Kiev have invented a new modern-day folk hero.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I've heard way too many stories about the Ghost of Kiev to say anything about him. I've heard that he was dead, but he shot down 80 Russian aircraft, which was incredibly far-fetched. I've heard that he had never existed, and he actually represented the entirety of the Ukrainian Air Force. Now we're hearing that he didn't exist, but he was actually multiple different Ukrainian pilots. I don't really know what story to go with anymore about the Ghost of Kiev, and so I'm just going to wait until this war is over to try and get a good idea of who the Ghost of Kiev was, if he even was real, because there's just been way too many stories at this point for me to really go with any of them. So I thank you very much for the support, but unfortunately, I don't know what the Ghost of Kiev is anymore, just due to how many stories have come out about him and who he was. So I'm going to wait until the end of the war to get a good answer to that question, but I do thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from KG. Very generous of you, and thank you very much for that. Who says, DJI has a system called Aeroscope, which can identify certain DJI drones and their telemetry. Even a consumer can buy that product. Ukraine is moving away from DJI.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I actually did not know that there was a system where you could identify DJI drones and their telemetry. I did not know that at all, so I thank you very much for the support and also providing us that information, because that's something I did not know. I thought that the DJI drones were kind of on their own internal system directly connected to the iPhone, although it is over Bluetooth and that can be tracked. But at the same time, I thought it wouldn't be that easy. So that actually may make the dissemination of drone information much easier for the Russians to go through, and it may cut down on that time to actually make it a viable option to attack the drone operators with an artillery strike or something similar to it. So I thank you very much for the support, and I also thank you for sharing that info with us. That's very important info to have, and it also makes me reassess what I was saying a little bit earlier about the DJI drones being used. So thank you once again, and that's kind of support helps out this channel a lot. Once again, any kind of support helps out this channel, but yours will definitely help us to keep on going and plan for the future. So thank you once again. I hope that answers the question, or well, at least addresses the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have an $8 donation from RDY4THDLL, who says, lots of foreign equipment being sent to Ukraine. Is the training for the new weapons accompanying the new hardware?
For the large part, I could say yes. We know that, we know that the Germans actually have sent in brought in Ukrainians to Germany to train them how to use the Panzerhaubitze 2000 SPG. We also know that, to a small part, the U.S. Navy is actually operating some kind of brown water fleet training for the Ukrainian soldiers who will be given fast boats, and I have heard a little bit of information that some Ukrainians may have been sent to Fort Benning for artillery training, although I really haven't been able to confirm that, so take that one with a grain of salt. So we do know that Ukrainian soldiers have actually been shipped around the world, the ones who will be using these new Western systems, and learning how to use them. Some other systems are kind of a little bit easier to learn, like javelins and other small arms equipment. So I'm sure that they just send those over with a operator's manual translated into their language. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question, at least by and large for the general picture. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have an $8 donation from Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who says, latest news, Russia applied for membership in NATO for protection.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I do think that the Russians need some kind of protection. Obviously, they're not up to the task of even protecting themselves anymore, because they can't even pursue an offensive against a country that wasn't even considered to have one of the best militaries in the world by any means. And the Russians were considered to be a world superpower. We can now see that they're not even a regional power, so I can totally agree that they definitely need to apply for some NATO membership to try and get that sweet protection that they'll most likely be needing from the advantageous Chinese, who will most likely be trying to abuse their very weakened position here in the future, at least economically. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Judo 2001, who says, what about the Ukrainians building a wall along the Russian border with the burned out hulls of Russian vehicles? A good orc deterrent, eh?
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And yeah, I think that would be pretty funny to do. I don't really know if that would be smart to do, but it would be pretty neat to do anyways. So I do thank you very much for the support. The question is, will the Russians pay for that wall? And the answer is yeah, they pretty much pay for it through the destroyed vehicle. So I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Joe King and a $5 donation from Bruce Allison. Thank you both for your support of the channel. As always, as I say all the time, we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $5 donation from Easy Shifty, who says, when the Enforcer brand coffee comes out, the first blend should be Spring Leaf.
Hey, that's a pretty smart one. I like that one too. We actually had T72 brew in our minds because T72 tanks tend to have a very common aptitude for brewing up. So I thought that was a pretty fun one with the pun and stuff. But that one's also a pretty cool one too. I like that. So whenever we get around to actually making Enforcer brand coffee, which I'm not sure when, we're trying to figure out how to do that. I am definitely going to try and see about making that one of our first blends. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Cyber Dragon Gaming, who says, at the Enforcer, my first ever super chat to anyone. You guys are top notch. I've been here since day 40 or so. Facts are key. Keep it up, guys.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And it is, of course, very moving in a way to hear that this is the first time you've ever super chatted anyone, and you found us worth the time to help support our channel and keep us doing what we're doing. It's weird to me, in a way, that we're able to garner massive amounts of support for fundraisers beyond really what anyone else has been able to do on YouTube, as far as I know, at least on the small scale. Of course, there's people out there on a much larger scale that have done more than us, but I started off at nothing at the beginning of these streams. I only had 80 subscribers, and I started from 80 subscribers. We're now at 57,000, 58,000 really, and we've raised to almost $250,000 in support for Ukraine, and I can't believe that, honestly. We've also had Operator Starsky on. We're now eyeballing in the future having Funker 530 and Operator Starsky on during the same stream. I'm still trying to get the details about that laid out, and we're also going to be going over to Funker 530 stream here in the future, and I'll be a guest over there. So very interesting stuff coming up in the future, and it's really honestly amazing to believe that we've made it this far in really such a short amount of time, just doing what we do. So I thank you very much once again for the support, and it does mean a lot. And I'm very proud to know that this is the first time you super chatted and that you found it worthwhile to support this channel. So thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from BSG Wolf, who says, if Turkey blocks Sweden and Finland, then yes, they should be booted from NATO. Turkey passage can be naval blockaded.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and I'm going to kind of not really comment on that too much, because I feel like that is going to go a little bit into politics, because it's a very tricky subject there, kicking Turkey out or not. And of course, I could go over the reasons why and the reasons why not again, and I'll actually do that here in brief. The reasons why not to kick Turkey out is because they actually have control over the strait that leads into the Black Sea. If they're kicked out of NATO, Turkey could, of course, try and align itself with the Russians, although historically that would not be a precedent, but considering the modern world, that may be something they do. And then the Russians would have complete control and access to the Mediterranean Sea, and then it may actually be Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria that are cut off, and also Georgia in a small way, that are completely cut off from access to the greater oceans outside of Turkey, for example, the Mediterranean, Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean, just to name a few. So I thank you very much for the support. Also, well, wait a minute, let me go over the reasons why to kick them out. Sweden and Finland are, of course, large chunks of land, well, massive countries, at least on the map. Of course, this is a Mercator projection of the map, so countries more closer to the poles are larger. For example, South Africa is actually not that large, and neither is New Zealand, and Finland isn't that large as well. If you put them in the middle of the map, they're actually much smaller than they seem, but still, they are very large chunks of land in the northeastern area of Europe, and if the Russians were able to take these over, which I'm highly doubting considering that you can't do anything right now, it would, of course, throw a massive wrench into the strategic situation for NATO, because these countries would now become Russian-aligned and most likely puppet states. So I believe that it is critically important for NATO and the United States as a whole to secure its strategic interests in northeastern Europe and try and bring in Sweden and Finland to the alliance. So in that regard, I can understand kicking out Turkey, but on the same note, I can understand not kicking them out because they're very important strategic members. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're moving on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5. Next up, we have a $5 donation from William Harris, who says, "For Black Friday the 13th, LOL."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you for supporting Friday. Well, I didn't actually notice it was Friday the 13th until now. That's a bad news bear. I think Jason Voorhees just popped up near the Donets River, and that may be why the Russians have completely been wiped out and pushed back in this area, is because Jason Voorhees has been supporting the Ukrainian forces. I didn't know that was Friday the 13th, but I do thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you for giving us support here on this very unlucky day, Friday the 13th. With that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $6 donation from Martin Nielsen, who says, "This channel's success is due to two incredibly friendly people. Kindness is strength. Good morning from Copenhagen, Denmark." And thank you very much, Martin, for the very kind words you had for us there.
And I do thank you very much. I'm just being me. This is how I naturally am. You can ask Matthew. But me and Matthew are just like this in our normal daily lives. So I thank you very much for thinking we're kind. I'm just thinking I'm being normal, but apparently it's kind. So I thank you so much once again for the support. It does help us out a long way. And I do thank you for saying that we are successful in a way, because I would hope that we are. And I'd hope that this news is reaching as many people as possible. Hopefully all the people who are looking for it out there on YouTube. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. It is, of course, wonderful to hear kind words like that all the time. It does let us know that we are doing the right thing and a good thing, and then continuing on is, of course, a wonderful thing to do. So thank you so much once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Max, who says, just so you know, they'd have to amend the NATO treaty to kick anyone out. Partially, same reason Greece and Turkey joined on the same day.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I actually did not know that there was no provisions or articles in the NATO Charter that allows them to kick members out. I didn't actually know that, so I thank you very much for the support and sharing that information with us, because now that removes Turkey from the situation entirely and their chance of being kicked out. So, thank you once again for the support and the info, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Hegemony Cricket, who says even if Turkey left NATO, access to the Black Sea can easily be controlled by Greece, which is also a NATO member.
That's very true as well, and I do thank you for the support, and that's actually an incredibly interesting idea. Let's look at the Greek territorial waters. Greek territorial waters. Let's look at the map of that, and let's find a good one. This is the map of Greek territorial waters. So, I don't know how to read that map. Look at me, y'all. I'm like a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. I have no idea how to read that map at all. Let's see if we can get a better idea. So apparently, this light blue outline, according to this map, is the territorial waters of Greece, and you can actually see that there is a decent little strip here down the center that would lead into the Mediterranean Sea. I was thinking it would be a little bit weird for Greece to control the waters all the way around its country. Here on this map, though, that does appear to be... honestly, I don't know what's going on with Greek territorial waters. And some of them, it looks like they control all the way out to Crete, and others, it looks like they only control small areas around the islands, and ships can pass in between. I'm not really sure what the territorial waters will look like, so I'll actually err on the side of caution and say that they control an area like this, which is just massive and pretty much half of the Mediterranean Sea heading towards Cyprus. So I thank you very much for the support. That is actually something very interesting to note, that the Greeks could actually control that area of waters on their own and deny access to Russian vessels. Although, for some reason, if they were able to do that already, why would it matter if the Turks cut off the Strait of Istanbul or not, considering that the Russians could just be stopped in Greek territorial waters anyways? But I do thank you very much for the support. I will have to look a little bit more into that if I can about the territorial waters and where that actually is for Greece. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I hope that kind of addresses the comment in a way. So thank you once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Teddy D, who says, Enforcer, don't you understand? This is all part of Putin's master plan. Kharkiv is just a distraction. Vladdy is a master strategist. I kid. Slava Ukraine.
Well, thank you very much for the support, and I was about to absolutely agree with you. He is an absolute master strategist at getting everyone killed. He's doing a great job at that, and so I think that he is like the mastermind of those kinds of plans, because he's gotten more soldiers killed in this war than the Americans got killed in Vietnam over an incredibly long amount of time. Gee, we were over there for quite some while. I mean, like, when I'm thinking about it, 1965 to 1973. So we were over there around 20 years nearly, around 17 actually. And we only had 50,000 soldiers die over 15 years. The Russians have had nearly 26,000 die over 2 months. So I thank you so much for the support, and I do like the joke. That was a pretty good one, and I do thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have another $5 donation from Hegemony Cricket again, who says, Stary Sotiv means Old Sotiv in Russian and Ukrainian.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I actually did not know that Stary was some kind of name like New York. Apparently, that's the Ukrainian and Russian version of saying something like New York. And so I thank you so much for the support. And if that is new Saltiv, where is old Saltiv? That's something that I would like to know. So thank you once again for the support, and I do thank you for providing that info to us because it gives us a little bit of context as to the naming, I guess you could say, rules of Ukrainian towns and villages. So, thank you once again for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Daniel Turner, who says, what if Ukraine did a Battle of the Bulge type thing into a weak Russian border zone and take it into Russia? Thoughts?
Well, I thank you very much for the support. We've answered that question a pretty decent amount, but I will answer it again. One thing that I believe the Ukrainians should be very careful with is pushing into Russian territory. Pushing into Russian territory could force the Russians' hand into saying that this war is going incredibly bad for them, and then they may give the orders for general mobilization and move their entire military to the Ukrainian front, which could put the Ukrainians on the back foot. Although I'm still kind of skeptical, even throwing their entire military weight at Ukraine, that this would change the course of the war. It would push the Ukrainians back an incredibly substantial amount within the first few weeks, considering that those forces would be freshly supplied, brand new, and wouldn't have been suffering any sort of depletion at that point. So I think that within the first 2 weeks, the Ukrainians would actually be pushed back a large amount. But whether they could actually stabilize their front lines or not after that is somewhat questionable. So I don't think they should push into Russian territory, because I feel like the consequences of doing such a thing are far greater than the benefits. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Ray Corinne, who says, are you going to contact at Timcast to go on and get the word out? You raise a ton of money.
Timcast. Let's pull that up. Timcast. Hey, look! This guy called the Enforcer is running in stream. Belarus Switching Sides? What in the world? Anyways, let's pull up Timcast. It looks like this guy touches on a lot of political stuff. And while I'm not like bashing him or anything for covering political stuff, I don't do political stuff, so I think there would be a little bit of a disconnect there, because he'd ask me political questions like, what do you think about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad vote to fund War Machine, the anti-war left is dead? Like, he would ask me a question like that, and I'd be like, oh, I don't really comment on that stuff, you know, I stay down the middle, you know, I can tell you about both sides, but I can't, like, pick a side, you know, because that's not what I do. So, I mean, that would be interesting. As long as he didn't try and, like, make me pick a side or anything on anything, I would go on there and talk, you know, and of course talk about the war in Ukraine and stuff. But as far as getting on there and talking about, like, stuff about the abortion bill that's moving around the United States, I would rather not talk about that kind of stuff, because that would be, like, trying to fix me to one political side or the other. So I thank you very much for the support. I'll think about it. But as far as going on there, just in case if it was to get political, I really don't go down that road at the moment. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, just posted the captured video, a 49-second walk-around of the captured Russian leaf spring truck on your Discord chat. You can't miss it with a bonus. Thank you. Enjoy it.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I will go take a look at that. So I thank you very much for sharing that info with me and telling me where it is. Hopefully I can remember to go take a look at that after the stream, and I do thank you so much for the support once again, Hoodoo, Texas. So with that, thank you, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Big Cheese, who says, just wanted to say hello from New Mexico tonight, although I'm from Texas. Thank you and Matt for all the hard work.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and it is wonderful to hear that we have Leaf Spring Army members from all around the world, even here in the United States, being from many different states. Of course, I still think that Alabama is the best state in the country, but, of course, everyone has something going for their state somewhere. Unless if you live in Ohio. I don't think anyone's got anything going for them in Ohio, but I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a way. So thank you once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Secular Sakai, who says, could you please talk a bit about the Russian dissidents and Ukrainians of Russian descent fighting for Ukraine, like the Freedom of Russia Legion? I feel like they don't get enough coverage in Slava Ukraine. And I have no idea how to say that. I'm not even going to try to say it.
Is it Zarotnu?
Zasvobodu.
Could you put that one in the chat for me real quick?
Yeah. There you go.
All right, we're waiting for it. We're waiting for it. A lot of people are saying, Ohio rocks. I was just playing with y'all. Don't take that seriously. Zazvodbu. Zazvodbudu. I don't know what that means. Unfortunately, I haven't heard that before. But I do thank you very much for the support. And to answer your question, could you reread it for me, Matthew? Because I got so distracted by trying to pronounce that, I forgot the question.
Let's see here. Just a moment. The question was, could you please talk a bit about the Russian dissidents and Ukrainians of Russian descent fighting for Ukraine, like the Freedom of Russia Legion?
Oh, okay, I got you. So to answer that question, I do try and cover them as much as possible. Of course, it's very interesting here. We know that there's Belarusian fighters, Russian fighters, and also Russian dissidents within Russia itself committing sabotage attacks. Out of those three groups, we don't really get a lot of news on any of them. I'm not sure if it's because the Freedom of Russian Legion is being kept low-key, maybe because they're not being moved directly to the front. Maybe the Ukrainian government doesn't really trust them all the way, and so they're kind of a bit of a propaganda unit, but they're not exactly an actual fighting unit per se. I'm not really sure about that, but still, we do know that they're there, and they are near the front lines near Kharkiv, last we heard. Unfortunately, we haven't heard any news of them recently, but I will try and keep everyone apprised of the situation of the Belarusian Mustache Man unit, the Russian... the Free Russian Legion that's inside of Ukraine, and also the Russian saboteurs that are pro-Ukrainian inside of Russia. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that kind of does answer the question based off of the previous information we got on them. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Electrostatic1, who says, Greek territorial waters can't cut off any international sea routes. The Turks have a special maritime treaty that allows them to close off access to the Black Sea only to belligerents in times of war.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I thank you for clarifying that. I thought it would be weird for the Greeks to actually control this entire Aegean Sea and be able to deny access to any countries that are further up stream of the Aegean Sea inside of the Black Sea. That was something I was feeling like would create some kind of diplomatic row if that was the case. And so I thank you very much for clarifying that, and also clarifying the conditions that the Turks can actually close the straits under. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and providing a little bit of clarification and info. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Hegemony Cricket again, who says Putin will be in enough trouble if NATO enters the war. But if Texas enters, it's over for Russia. Do not mess with Texas.
I agree. Do not mess with Texas. The last time I messed with anything from Texas, I went into a Buc-ee's bathroom, and it was incredible. Honestly, speaking of Buc-ee's is impressive. Like if y'all have never ever seen a Buc-ee's, there are a couple outside of Texas now, like the Supermart Buc-ee's. But if you want to find a real Buc-ee's gas station, most of them are in Texas. And you've got to go see them. They are impressive. There's like 100 gas pumps at this one gas station. And they have a store there that's the size of a supermarket. But the thing is not a normal supermarket. It's like set up like a tourist attraction nearly. And the bathrooms are the cleanest. So I'm telling you, don't mess with Texas, because their janitorial services in those bathrooms are impressive. They clean up every single spot of grime in those bathrooms every split second. Like, you could be in there on the toilet and the janitor just bursts through the door, like, shoots some, like, like, Mr. Clean on something, wipes it off, and is like, sorry, man, and then they close the door. I gotta tell you, do not mess with Texas, and do not mess with Buc-ee's, but make sure to go by and visit that place, because they have some really good food and nice restrooms. So I thank you very much for the support, and I do agree that you do not want to mess with Texas. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Juju Harvey, who says, I have been on here since day 2. I tune in every night. Have you seen Russian military uniforms for sale on eBay? Apparently, Russian military uniforms are in high demand.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I have seen some Russian uniforms, even before the war, being sold on the internet. What was really weird to me is that they were the exact same pattern that the Russians are actually using, the Ratnik camouflage pattern, the exact same cuts that they actually use in normal military service. So to answer that question, yes, I have seen them, and of course I go browsing and shopping every once in a while, seeing what's for sale out there, and I have seen that. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Nate Baker, who says, add GPS trackers to all new washing machines in Ukraine. Easy artillery targets, LOL.
Oh, Lord, you're absolutely right. We just saw a washing machine in a trench, in a helicopter, and inside of vehicles. And so if you want to track down where the Russians are, get a washing machine with a tracker on it. You know, honestly, I feel like you could, at this point, get a massive cardboard box with a stick and some string and put a washing machine under it, and you'll actually capture some Russian soldiers that way pretty easy. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a way. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Diffuse56, who says, Enforcer and Matt, what would you guys say is the stupidest thing you have seen the Russians do in a video, besides invading Ukraine to begin with, that is?
Well, to answer that question, I think the stupidest thing I've ever seen so far, there's been a lot, but the stupidest one I ever saw that keeps in my head rent-free is this time that a Russian soldier was getting freaked out because a small bomblet exploded like 100 yards away, and so he tripped and busted his teeth open on top of a BMP, and then just seconds afterwards, while he was cradling his mouth, a bomblet fell right onto the BMP and blew the whole thing up. And well, it was cut in the video, but you could tell that it was a good like 2 minutes that it passed before that bomblet actually got dropped on that BMP, and that guy was cradling his mouth the whole entire time instead of getting in the BMP and trying to move it, or getting off the BMP and running away, and it led him to pretty much to his quick demise. So I think that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen the Russians do on film. And so I hope that answers the question, and I thank you so much for the support. I bust out laughing at that one every once in a while still in my head, because I remember how that guy just smacked his head straight into the grill of the BMP-2's like engine bay, and then he just sat there on top of that tank for, you know, the rest of his time, and just sat there cradling his mouth and kind of like doing the Peter Griffin thing, you know, that joke is famous for being a run in Family Guy. But anyways, I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we want to recognize a few $5 donations. We have one from Thomas Green, Van Six again, Frank Schifrin. Thank you very much to all of you for your support of the channel. It's very much appreciated. And up next, we have another $5 donation from Hegemony Cricket, who says, during the Cold War, I stole Brezhnev's eyebrows. He was really surprised, but no one could tell.
If you stole Brezhnev's eyebrows, everyone in the world would be able to tell. That man had the biggest eyebrows on Earth. It wasn't even an eyebrow, it was a unibrow. For everyone who doesn't know who Leonid Brezhnev is, Leonid Brezhnev, here we go. This is the man who had legendary unibrows. Look at this man. Tell me that that is not the epitome of the Soviet Union and the suffering that it inflicted on its people. Imagine having to put that picture up in every single store and political office around the country. People's eyes were burning out when they walked into the DMV to go to get a driver's license while that guy was in charge of Russia. So I thank you very much for the support. And if you did steal that man's eyebrows, I think everyone would have known. But I thank you so much for the support and the joke in a way. It does help out our channel a lot, the support. And also, it's pretty funny to hear the joke. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from D.D. Reynolds, who says, good evening. Have you heard the intercepted call in reference to a soldier's description of a dump filled with thousands of deceased Russian soldiers?
I have not heard the call about that, unfortunately. I'm not exactly sure if that's true, because once again, I don't really include a lot of phone call stuff here on the stream, because this stream is really mostly revolved around visual things, like pictures and videos that you can actually see and verify for the most part, and occasionally an official report from some government somewhere in the world, like the United States, the Department of Defense, the Ministry of Defense, or the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. So unfortunately, I have not heard that phone call, and I can't verify the validity of that information. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 donation from Pedal Juice, who says, Mr. Lunchtime tells me he wants to defect to the Leaf Spring Army since jocularity and Western rations are way better than warmongering.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And actually, I try and be pretty nice. Maybe Mr. Lunchtime isn't a bad guy. I'd let him over if he wants to come over. So tell Mr. Lunchtime that we're not going to have enough food to feed him, but he can come over if he wants to. So I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one. But before we do have, Matthew, how many Super Chats do we have left?
We just have 3 left.
All right, and with that, on to the next question.
And let me recognize a $2 donation from Guess3N. Thank you very much for your support of the channel. Up next, we have a $2 donation from Philip Fixes, who says, been here since day 17. What about the rest of you?
I'm sure that a lot of people are very proud of how long they've been around here. A lot of people are very proud. And so if everyone would like to say, much like everyone says what country they're from, if you would like to say how long you've been here, like what day you got on the stream and started watching from then on, let everyone know, because that would be cool to me as well to see how many new viewers we have and how many longtime viewers we have. So I thank you so much for the support. Hopefully everyone will give us an answer to that question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And our final well, let me change that. We have one super chat here that just came in from WL for $10, who says, what weapons were sent to Ukraine to intercept rockets or missiles?
The weapons that were sent to Ukraine to intercept rockets and missiles, there's supposedly a Patriot weapon system that is being sent to Ukraine or has been there, although I haven't heard a lot of information about that. We've also heard that the Iron Dome system is supposed to be making it there, although we haven't actually heard about either one of them arriving or actually being used. And we can actually see a lot of people coming through this chat here, and I'm hearing a lot of interesting numbers. A lot of them are actually longtime viewers. For example, day 2, day 1, a lot of day 1s actually, and congratulations to all of y'all for being day 1 viewers. But anyways, I haven't actually heard about any of those systems arriving here, so unfortunately, I can't really give a lot of information about them. But I do know that the Patriot system and the Iron Dome system are 2 of the most popular systems that are supposed to be making it to Ukraine to help shoot down missiles and defend major cities from incoming Russian missile attacks. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the last super chat of the night.
The last one of the night goes to C.A. Lags, who puts in a $5 donation and says, the Russians are forgetting to steal the dryers. No wonder they're moldy.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And yeah, that's true. We never actually see them stealing dryers. It's always just the washing machines themselves. But maybe the Russians do the kind of old-fashioned thing where they leave the clothes to dry on like a clothesline or something. But I do thank you very much for the support, and that is a pretty funny joke. So thank you once again. And with that, we've reached the end of the super chats for tonight. And we're actually going to answer as many live chat questions as we can before we round out this stream. So it's not going to be 3 tonight. We're just going to keep going until we feel like we've answered a lot of them. And so with that, what is our first live chat question, Matthew?
So our first one is from GHJKLZ, who says, Enforcer, could Lukashenko be trying to get to... Excuse me, let me start over. Could Lukashenko be trying to get Ukraine to relax like Putin did prior to the invasion?
No, because the Ukrainians would not relax based off the words of a third-party country that's not really involved directly in the fighting. That would not make the Ukrainian soldiers like, whew, well, at least he likes us. You know, it's not going to be like that. I think he's actually saying that to try and jump ship. That seems entirely like a posturing thing, what he said today, to start make Belarus look a little bit more favorable to the West and make it look like there's an opportunity there that he may actually try and jump on if offered the chance. So I thank you very much for the support. Well, not the support, but the question. I thank you very much for the question, and I hope that did answer it. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And real quick, we just got a $5 super chat in from Christina Carpenter, who says, Hello, Enforcer. Any news on the status of Mariupol? Any chance they may be rescued?
We know that the status of the Mariupol, the Mariupol area and the Azovstal in particular, is that the Russians have breached the defensive perimeter around the Azovstal, and for about over a week now, the Ukrainians and the Russians have been fighting a pitched battle to try and push the Russians back out of the defensive perimeter and for the Russians to completely destroy the Azov and the 36th Infantry Brigade. Unfortunately, today we don't actually have any news on how that's unfolding, although yesterday it seemed like the Azov and the 36th Infantry Brigade may be in the process of regaining the lost ground inside of the Azovstal and reaffirming their defensive perimeter around the plant, although we didn't get any news today, and we will have to wait until tomorrow to see if we can get any more confirmed news about what's actually going on down in there. But I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, Serenity Music Studio puts in a $1 donation. Thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $2 donation from Dino Ress, who says, Day 2 subscriber, made every stream except day 52 through 54.
Well, thank you very much for the support, and it is wonderful to hear that you have been here for quite a while. I mean, like, golly, day 2 subscriber, man, you were here before the wave. The wave came in on day 4, just for everyone to know. That's when this channel actually started to pick up a lot of steam, and a lot of people started to watch it. But before that, this stream only got like 100 views or so. And so it's incredible to me to know that we actually get around 10,000 live audience viewers per night at its peak, because that's insane to me, honestly, that this is such a popular war stream about the news going on over there. So I thank you so much, DinoRest, for being around for so long. And it's fine that you missed day 52 through 54. It's just wonderful to know that you are getting the news that really no one else is giving anymore. Not a lot of people are talking about the stuff here, at least on mainstream news. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a chat from your local trooper who says, how much longer do you think the Russians can continue their offensive, or maybe how long can the Ukrainians hold their defenses?
Well, the Ukrainians are mostly on conducting counterattacks across most of the front lines, so it's not really a question of how long can the Russians continue their offensives and how long can the Ukrainians continue their defensives. It's actually vice versa at this point. And right now it seems that the Ukrainians will be able to continue their offensives for quite some while because they are making progress, and the amount of areas that they have to cover in some of their most successful areas where they're having offensives are very small. For example, from the area of the Ukrainian front lines where they are near Kharkiv, they only have to cover around 8 more miles to make it to the Russian border. So, in terms of a counterattack, that's a very small amount of ground to cover. You have to remember that from Kiev to Chernobyl, it's nearly 50 miles. As the crow flies, that's not even going down the major roads. So I thank you very much for the question, and I do believe that the Ukrainians will be able to keep up their counterattacks for quite some time, and the Russians may actually be hard-pressed in certain areas of the front, like the Kharkiv area and also the areas around Kherson, to hold their defensives for much longer beyond the next week or two. So I thank you very much for the question once again. I hope that does answer it the best of my abilities based off of the knowledge we've been able to acquire over the past 80 days. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, just to recognize one more super chat that came in, we have a $5 donation from Serenity Music Studio who says, could you repeat why the Belarusians may be switching sides? I didn't catch that.
Give me just a second here. And to answer that question, the Belarusians may be switching sides because they're seeing the writing on the wall that the Russians are doing poorly. And we have had a historical precedent that Lukaschenko hasn't been the best ally of the Russians in a way. He's always been a little bit of an opposition, and light opposition to the Russians, and it appears that he may be trying to line himself up, since the Russians look like they're doing so poorly, to jump ship and maybe try and align himself to the West, considering that he's now probably seeing that the West is in a stronger position than Russia will be for an incredibly long time. So that's why I believe that Lukashenko is starting to switch sides, and we also seen his rhetoric change from being pro-Russian to pro-Ukrainian in a way, and talking about how well their armed forces fight, and that the Belarusians ought to learn something from him. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And we have another super chat from Rocky's Road, who puts in a $10 donation and says, Enforcer in the mountains above Fort Davis, Texas, you have to get the dowser out before a good well is drilled. Slava Ukraine.
Well, Slava Ukraine, and thank you very much for the support, Rocky's Roads. And I've heard a lot of stuff in the chat tonight about people saying dowsers have been scientifically proven to not work. And I've also seen people saying that dowsers do work. I don't know which it is, honestly, at this point. I've always heard that they were just like a wives' tale kind of thing. But let's pull that up real quick. Dowsers, do they work? How do dowsers work? Dowsers use 2 rods or a single forked stick to detect underground water sources. They believe that when they walk over a water source, the rods will spontaneously cross or the stick will suddenly jerk downward. How does the stick get this power, though? That's a question that I'd have that's kind of throwing a little bit of a wrench into me believing this, is how in the world do two sticks work to just start jerking down towards the ground or something? Like, look at this. These are just two copper wires. You know, this right here, that looks like two skewers that this guy took or something like that. And he's just bent them outwards, and it's just a stick. Like, where is it getting the power to actually work? So I'm kind of a little skeptical about that. But I do thank you for the support. But I'm not exactly sure if the dowsers do work. But a lot of people do count in them, and it did work for that Ukrainian guy in particular. So I'm going to keep an open mind on that and say they might work, they might not work. I'm not entirely sure. But I do thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Dino Res, who says, Enforcer, the Ukraine has had a tough time in Kherson. They need to make a massive push to eject Russians that are well dug in after weeks of occupation there up to Melitopol. What are your thoughts?
Let's see. Let me read that over real quick. Well, one thing that I would like to consider down here near the Kherson area is that while the Russians may have been here for weeks, they were also north of Kiev for weeks, yet it didn't really help them out in the end because while they were trying to fortify, their positions were just so weak that they were still pushed out of them. So while they may have been in this area for weeks, it may just be a matter of time before they collapse. But then again, it's much easier to control a defensive position than an offensive position. And right now we know that the Russians are controlling a defensive position down there. So it may be quite some while before we actually see any kind of progress occur in Kherson. Or this may just become a stalemate where the Ukrainians try and fail time and time again to try and retake Kherson or push the Russians back from the area around Kryvyi Rih. So I thank you very much for the support. And I hope that does answer the question in a way. But I'm not entirely sure how the situation is going to unfold at the moment down here in the southwestern area of the country. We don't have enough information right now to show that the Ukrainians are able to make progress and that the Russians are either incredibly firm in their hold on the area or that their grip is weakening. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a chat from Will Riley, who says, do you think that Corn Pop was responsible for the demise of Sylvia? I heard he likes salmon patties.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And those bad boys, they you know, what happened? Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, maybe Corn Pop ate the fish. I'm not really sure. But I do like the joke. It's a pretty fun one. It's really tying in a lot of the jokes on here. By the way, y'all, that's not really getting political or anything. Of course, I don't really consider jokes like that, you know, political. But still, at the same time, it's funny. You know, the Corn Pop thing was pretty funny. Also, Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon is a return character here on the stream, created by, oh man, how in the world did I forget his name? Matthew, can you help me out here?
Wait, what now?
Who's Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon? I'm like drawing.
Oh, S. Moore.
Yeah, S. Moore. Golly, like William Allen is the Dick Cheney guy, and then S. Moore is the Sylvia Sockeye Salmon. I don't know if Corn Pop ate Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon, but I wouldn't doubt it. That guy is a little fishy. Pun intended. So I thank you very much for the support. Well, not the support. I thank you very much for the question, and I do like the joke. So thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a chat from Reflection, who says, is there any unorganized insurgency going on in occupied areas, meaning just regular people picking up arms with little Ukrainian government assistance?
Yes, we do know that there is one area behind the lines north of Bryansk, which is this red area here, this red pentagon, where we do, well, actually that's a hexagon, sorry, correction, where we do believe that there is a decent amount of partisan activity underway. We haven't gotten a lot of news about it lately, but we did get some pictures out of there for about a week where Ukrainian partisan units were actually taking out Russian supply convoys and also some lightly armored Russian units. So I thank you very much for the question, and to answer it, that is the only area that we've been able to confirm that partisan activity has a heavy presence. So thank you very much. I hope that does answer the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next here, we have a chat from William Harris, who says, I've been watching since February 26th, and my question is, Why would we let Finland or any country into NATO and not Ukraine? Is NATO using Ukraine to fight Russia without using NATO troops?
Well, I thank you very much for the question. It's a very interesting one. But the thing is that we weren't able to get Ukraine in because the threat at the time was that if Ukraine enters NATO, Russia will go to war. And so we were scared that they were going to go to war with us. So we decided, in the best interest of NATO and trying to avoid an all-out war, we were going to delay or completely stop Ukraine from joining NATO. Then Russia attacked them anyways after we had pretty much made that guarantee, and then we had to start supporting Ukraine because they're still heavily tied into Western European and American interests. So that's why we started to support them. Meanwhile, Finland and Sweden were not getting these direct threats, and also the situation has become somewhat of an emergency in the NATO world because now we're starting to think along the lines of the domino effect again, where if Ukraine falls, who's next? Finland, Sweden, the Baltic states, Poland? That's kind of become the question. So now we're trying to get everyone under NATO's defensive net so that way we can make sure that something like Ukraine doesn't happen again, this time to Finland or Sweden. So I thank you very much for the question. I hope that answers it the best way possible. We're not exactly using Ukraine to fight Russia without using NATO troops. The plan was to actually avoid the war altogether, at least as far as NATO was concerned. But in the process of trying to avoid a war, they actually made one. So once again, hope I answered that question pretty well. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $25 donation from Linda Miller. I feel like I can't talk tonight, but anyways, thank you very much, Linda, for the $25 donation. We appreciate it very much, and I'm sure the enforcer would like to weigh in on that as well.
Yes, I thank you so much. Of course, I always like for people to ask questions or say something so that way I can recognize you a little bit more. But thank you so much, Linda Gay Miller, for the support. It does help us out a whole load, and it does help us to continue running this channel. So I thank you so much for enjoying it to the point that you would help us to keep on going with it. And so, once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. So, with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Dino Refs once again, who says, "Dowsing rods are pseudoscience, snake oil salesman, bull hockey. Take it from a real scientist."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I think that a British guy came up with a system very similar to this, to detect like explosives and stuff. I don't know the exact name of the product anymore, but I think that there was something that followed down a similar line as that. So with that, I thank you so much for the support and bringing that up. I'm not really sure what to think right now because a lot of people are swearing by the dowsing rod, so I'm just going to stay neutral on that one. Going to pull a Switzerland move here, and I know a lot of people are saying that Switzerland's becoming less neutral, but only in this one instance. So thank you very much for the support. I hope that answers the addresses the comment in a way, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a comment from Rated PG, who says, "Enforcer, the Russian side is getting clownier and wilder as they start to fall apart. Is it possible they'll just melt away without Putin in charge?"
I'm not entirely sure about that. That's something that I don't believe will necessarily happen. If Putin was not in charge, someone else is going to get in charge, and they're going to be controlling the whip in a way. And of course, trying to make sure that everyone keeps in line and making sure that everything keeps on going. You know, when Stalin died, the Soviet Union didn't collapse, and I would consider Stalin to be about as bad as Putin. And so I don't think that if Putin dies, the Russians will collapse in a way, you know, kind of like a movie where the evil leader dies and then the whole entire military or the country or whatever they're leading just literally falls apart right then. I don't think that's going to happen. So unfortunately, I just don't think that's the case, and there's never really been a historical precedent for a guy dying, unless if it's Tito. Tito was the only example of that, where a guy died and then an entire country just fell apart instantly. So I hope that answers the question, and with that, we're going to answer one last question from the comments, from the live chat, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream. And so with that, who is the lucky person who got in that last question?
All right, so the last question of the night goes to Shannon Trailer, who says, "Would you guys ever consider having Operator Starsky on again? He was very informal, and I loved all the questions you asked him to get an idea of what's going on firsthand."
Well, I thank you very much for the question. It's a very good one. And the answer is yes, we actually plan on having him on again. We were planning on having him on this Sunday again, but I actually sent him a message. I don't know if he's been able to read it yet, but I told him, hey, don't come on this Sunday, come on the next Sunday, because we're actually going to be having another massive special guest on, which will be Funker 530. So everyone stay tuned. We're actually going to try and get a decent amount of channels on here and have this stream heavily promoted for Sunday, so that way we can get as many people on here from as many channels around YouTube and try and make this one of the biggest fundraisers we've had. We'll probably pick another organization that we've done before, just because I feel like some of those organizations do a lot of good and we don't really have to get too creative in who we're giving support to. I think that sometimes it's good to just go with the beaten and tried true method, but once again, we'll just have to wait until we get closer to the day of then to see what we can do. And also, we have some bigger plans here in the horizon of people we can bring on, but I'm not going to say too much about that because we're not really sure if that's going to pan out. So, I hope I've answered that question, and with that, that is the end of tonight's stream. It has once again been a great pleasure delivering the war news to y'all for the past 24 hours of the war on day 79. If you are new to the stream and you watched all the way through the question segment, you're a trooper, and you've probably been watching this for an incredibly long while. I would highly suggest that you like, comment, and subscribe to this video, because we do run these streams every single day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war, and we do this every day of the week except for Mondays. That's the day I take off. And also we do summaries as well. Those usually come out in the middle of the day here in the United States. Well, it looks like we got another
It looks
chat.
like it looks like we actually have 2 super chats left. We have one more as well. Would you like to cover both of those?
Yes.
Okay, so first up we have actually, hold on. Okay, hold on just a minute. Having a little issue here with YouTube. Okay, so we have a $5 donation from Vasily, who says, Waitron, the water-sniffing dog, is more effective than dowsing rods. Hear me out. Humans have been using animals to find water effectively for ages.
That's true. I have heard about people using animals to find water. And so I do thank you very much for the support, and that is a little interesting tidbit to add on to the dowsing rod thing. And so I've seen that Dino Ress has thrown in a super chat to talk about dowsing rods as well. So, Matthew, could you read that one off first real quick?
So, Dino says, wait, dowsing rods require electroferromagnetic interactions between metals. Huge underground pools of water do not give off electromagnetic waves, and the only metal rods that could theoretically use are nickel, iron, and cobalt. Science.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, Dino Rest, and I think you put it to rest. I think I'd have to agree with Dino there, because he explained it out in a pretty understandable way, that the dowsing rod doesn't really seem to have anything behind it. Maybe it's just a coincidence that the dowsing rods are used right sometimes, and then other times they may be used wrong. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, Dino Rez, and I thank you for explaining out a little bit of the science behind why a dowsing rod may not work. So with that, thank you so much once again for the huge amount of support. It does help us out a lot. And with that, we're going to move on to the next super chat, because we actually got another one. So with that, Matthew, could you read off that one?
And the next one comes from MO, who puts in an $18 donation and says, how much wood would a woodpeck peck if a woodpeck could peck woodpeck peck?
Well, Matthew just got that right, so it looks like you didn't stump him. And I'm not really sure how to answer that question, because then again, it's just a riddle. I think you were trying to mess with Matthew. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope I did address that comment. I like the joke.
And Enforcer, I think if a woodpeck was in a spherical vacuum, at the speed of light, it could no, I'm just joking.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute, are you like Neil deGrasse Tyson? But then again, Neil deGrasse Tyson will ask a question like, when you fart, no one's around, can anyone hear it? Like, but anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support, and with that, everyone loves that saying. That's something that I've been saying in a long time, but we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for your support. We had a massive amount of support flow through at the end of the stream. That was really weird, but I'm very much happy for it. It does help out this channel a lot. And so I thank you all so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep on. Oh, what? All right. Here, we got another one, Matthew. Could you read that one off real quick?
So Dino says, rock on, Enforcer. Where do I send my mass of leaf springs to support the army?
Well, I thank you very much for the support again, Dinores. And if you want to send your leaf springs anywhere, send them to Ukraine, because they are using pieces of steel of higher quality to produce body armor for the Ukrainian forces. So, I thank you so much for the support once again. And with that, it's going to be the end of the stream. So I thank you all once again for the massive amount of support you all have given this channel, and also all of the interesting questions from the live chat as well. It's always interesting to listen to what a lot of people have on their minds and try and answer those questions the best I can based off of the knowledge I've got. Once again, it's been an honor to give you all the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. It's, of course, something that I highly pride myself on trying to deliver the best information I can, and I hope that a lot of y'all have enjoyed it once more. So, I will look forward to seeing all of y'all tomorrow on Saturday, which will only be one day away from our Sunday night fundraiser. We'll be running tomorrow night. So make sure to come around and give as much support as possible on Sunday. I think we'll read off this last super chat here, and then we're going to have to put a cutoff. For everyone to know, we're going to have to put a cutoff on this because I've actually tried to end the stream like 3 or 4 times now, and the super chats keep coming in, and I never put a cutoff on it. So this is going to be the cutoff here, but we're going to read off this last super chat, and then we're actually going to have to end the stream.
Okay, and the last super chat of the night goes to Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who says James Randy was given $1 million to anyone who could prove dousing, etc. Guess what?
I guess no one got the $1 million because I would have probably heard about that. Maybe James Randy. Let's see who this guy. Oh, I think I know this man. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. I was just making sure there. James Randy. I think this guy ran a show, didn't he? Where he talked about people with like super mystical powers and stuff, and he proved that they were all wrong. I think so. Let me look at this. I can't tell, but I do thank you very much for the support. And with that, that is going to be the end of tonight's stream. I saw that Dynarest just sent in another $5 donation, but unfortunately, I put in a cutoff, and I do thank you so much for your support, but, well, I'll just read it. Well, all right, we'll keep on going, but not for much longer. So, Matthew, could you read off the next one? Hello?
Oh, okay, sorry there just for a moment. We have a $5 donation from Dino Rest, who says, Enforcer is a young man. He doesn't need sleep.
I really do. I promise you. And then thank you so much for the support. I hope that answers that comment. With that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have one from Diffuse56, who says, who would win in a fight? Corn Pop and the Bad Dudes, or Mr. Lunchtime?
You tell me, man. Mr. Lunchtime is fighting a dude named Corn Pop. That man's going to eat him like cereal. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that answers the question, Diffuse56. Pretty good joke, by the way. I like that one. And so with that, I'm going to try and get through this exit as fast as I can. Oh, I thank you all very much for watching. It has been an honor to give out the news. We do run these streams every single day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the news of the war in Ukraine, except for Mondays. I do take that day off. So I thank you very much once again, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all very much, and Slava Ukraine, and Heroam Slava. Thank you, and have a great night.